रहे 2-5 मिनट
जैसे बोले सर।
जैसे बोलो यस जी।
I hope the Diwali festival was very fine with all of you, and message was reflected. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. Wish you all a very happy Diwali. We are restarting our educational series, and in this series, we are again starting with our GST sessions. The speakers for the session, CESG and CA Devendra Kataria ji, have joined. Immediate past chairman of CIRC, Atul ji, is also here. Lokesh Maheshwari ji, immediate past secretary, is also here with us. I would like to request Atul ji to speak a few words.
Thank you, Ankit bhai. And first of all, सभी को दीपावली की बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं, और सब लोग स्वस्थ रहें, मस्त रहें, और प्रोफेशन में रहते हुए अपनी नॉलेज को बढ़ाते हुए इस तरह के वेबिनार और सेमिनार से अपने जिम्मेदारियों का निर्वाह करते रहें। और मेरी सभी के साथ शुभकामनाएं हैं। और आज के जो हमारे स्पीकर हैं वो दोनों ही बड़े यंग और डायनेमिक स्पीकर हैं, यश जी और देवेंद्र जी। मैं शायद पहली बार उनको सुनूंगा आज, तो मैं बहुत एक्साइटेड हूं अपने स्पीकर्स को सुनने के लिए। और CIRC के पोर्टल से, CIRC की टीम से तरफ से हमारे दोनों स्पीकर्स का बहुत बहुत स्वागत, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। और जो भी हमारे साथ मेंबर हमारे साथ जुड़ रहे हैं, मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि आज के इस सेशन के बाद जो टॉपिक है वो हमारे स्पीकर के ज्ञान शेयरिंग के बाद कंट्रोवर्शियल इश्यूज इन GST, बहुत ही ऐसा आपको महसूस होगा कि जो हम लोग रोज प्रैक्टिकल चैलेंजेस, प्रॉब्लम्स को फेस करते हैं, उन सबका समाधान और जरूर मिलेगा। और उसके बाद क्वेश्चन आंसर सेशन में जो भी आपके क्वेरीज होंगी वो हमारे स्पीकर और अंकित सोमानी जी भी हमारे बहुत अच्छे GST के वक्ता हैं। और हम तो कभी कभी जब कुछ पूछना होता है तो अंकित भाई से बहुत सालों से पूछते रहते हैं, तो अंकित भाई का भी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Atul sir. Nitin ji is also here. Nitin ji, Vice Chairman CIRC.
Sir.
Nitin bhai, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to all of you.
Yes, sir. Please speak few words, sir.
Thank you. This program today's both of our speakers, Yash ji and Devinder ji. C. Atul Malhotra ji, immediate past chairman of CIRC. Lokesh Maheshwari ji, immediate past secretary of CIRC, and all the participants. A very warm good afternoon to all of you. आज से हमने ये शुरू करी है, जो सीरीज शुरू करी है फिर से एजुकेशनल मोड की। मैं समझता हूं कि हम इस सीरीज को आगे फर्दर CIRC में कंटिन्यू रखेंगे, जिससे कि जो हम सभी मेंबर्स की जो नॉलेज है वो एनरिच होगी, और जो बेस्ट स्पीकर्स हैं उनके वैल्यूएबल सजेशंस हमें मिलेंगे। सो विद दीज वर्ड्स आई वेलकम ऑल ऑफ यू। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
थैंक यू नितिन जी, थैंक यू। लोकेश जी और राजेश जी आज एक साथ हैं। लोकेश जी।
थैंक यू अंकित भाई। सभी जो मेंबर्स आज हमारे बीच में जुड़े हुए हैं उनको हैप्पी दिवाली मैं कहना चाहूंगा। और साथ में जो स्पीकर है, और मेरे लिए तो वेरी नॉन है कि जब से मैं प्रैक्टिस में आया हूँ, यश भाई को तो सुनता आया हूँ, और साथ देवेंद्र जी के साथ तो मैंने बहुत काम किया है। मेरे अपने ही शहर कोटा से हैं, और मुझे बिल्कुल इस चीज पे गर्व महसूस होता है कि मेरे यहाँ पर एक नेशनल लेवल की फैकल्टी है जो सब लोगों का ज्ञान वर्धन कर रही है। साथ में इमीडिएट पास्ट चेयरमैन हमारे अतुल मेहरोत्रा जी एंड नितिन भाई। डेफिनेटली अंकित भाई, जो आपने ये प्रयास वापस दोबारा स्टार्ट किया है कि इस तरह की एजुकेशनल सीरीज जो कहीं ना कहीं हम पिछले 3-4 महीनों में लैग कर रहे थे ड्यू टू प्रोफेशनल असाइनमेंट, बहुत सारे लोग भी बिजी थे, तो उसके बाद जो हमने वापस स्टार्ट किया है, डेफिनेटली ये हमारे मेंबर्स को डेफिनेटली फायदा पहुंचाएगा। क्योंकि धीरे धीरे अभी हम देखते जा रहे हैं GST के अंदर बहुत सारी कॉन्ट्रोवर्सीज हो रही है, बहुत सारे नोटिस आना स्टार्ट हो गए, और जो आज के स्पीकर है इनमें तो कोई डाउट ही नहीं है कि इनके पास किसी बात का कोई जवाब ना हो। इनके पास हर बात का जवाब है, तो सारे मेंबर्स को डेफिनेटली बेनिफिट होगा। थैंक यू वेरी मच। मैं बहुत स्पीकर्स को वापस दोबारा थैंक यू कहना चाहूंगा। कि सर आपने सीआईआरसी के लिए टाइम दिया। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
सर राजीव जी से भी 2 मिनट चाहूंगा।
राजीव जी से भी बात कर रहा हूँ।
हेलो अंकित जी, क्या हाल है?
बहुत बढ़िया सर।
हमारे नितिन जी भी दिखाई दे रहे हैं। नितिन जी वाइस चेयरमैन सर, अतुल जी, स्पीकर सर, सभी को नमस्कार।
यस
तो
सर।
सर सीआरसी के लिए आज का दिन मतलब स्पेशल होने वाला है, ऐसा हर बार की तरह मुझे लगता है। और हमारे जो स्पीकर सर है वो मतलब उनके बारे में कुछ कहने की जरूरत ही नहीं है। उनकी जो नॉलेज है वो इतनी बढ़िया है, इतनी शार्प है। हम तो अदरवाइज भी सुनते रहते हैं मेंबर्स से, तो जितने कंफ्यूजन है वो सर के पास कॉल आते ही रहते होंगे। बट आज एक ऐसा मंच है जिसपे सभी जो कोर इश्यूज है उनको एक साथ लिया जाएगा। तो माय विशेस फॉर टुडे सेशन एज अ स्पीकर और अदर जो भी मेंबर्स जुड़ रहे हैं साथ में, उन सबको पूरा लाभ पहुंचेगा इसकी, इसी उम्मीद के साथ सबको मेरी शुभकामनाएं। और आगे की प्रोसीड के लिए मैं चाहूंगा कि एमओसी आगे इसको बढ़ाए और ज्यादा वक्त ना लेते हुए जो हमारे स्पीकर सर हैं उनका सुनने का हमें मौका मिले, इससे अच्छी कोई बात नहीं हो सकती। तो हम बिल्कुल
यस सर।
प्रतीक्षा कर रहे हैं सर को सुनने के लिए। थैंक यू।
थैंक यू राजीव जी। Basically, the session for today is devoted to controversial issues in GST. ओरिजिनली जब ये डिस्कशन का पॉइंट था, यश भाई से, देवेंद्र जी से जब बात हो रही थी, तो ओरिजिनल बात ये थी कि कंट्रोवर्शियल इश्यूज के लिए अंकित जी आपने क्या इसमें 10-12 दिन का समय रखा है? कि कंट्रोवर्शियल इश्यूज जीएसटी के अंदर इतने हैं कि शायद 2 घंटे, 4 घंटे, 6 घंटे, 8 घंटे, शायद 10-12 दिन के लिए जरूरत पड़े। तो हम यश जी और देवेंद्र जी को दोबारा बार बार बुलाते रहेंगे। कंट्रोवर्शियल इश्यूज के अंदर आज जो मेजर एरियाज हम डिस्कस करने वाले हैं, उसके अंदर सेक्शन 16 सबसेक्शन 4 के कुछ टाइम लिमिट्स को लेकर उनके बारे में रीसेंट जजमेंट्स क्या हैं, कुछ कंट्रोवर्शियल इश्यूज हैं जैसे रेसिडेंशियल ड्वेलिंग के ऊपर क्या कुछ आरसीएम की लाइबिलिटी आएगी क्या, या जीएसटी ऑन रॉयल्टी इश्यूज, कुछ रीसेंट जजमेंट्स जो हैं, इवन इन रेस्पेक्ट ऑफ रिवर्सल ऑफ आईटीसी with respect to second proviso of section 16 subsection 2 read with rule 37 sub rule 1। कुछ हमने जब पेमेंट लेट किया सप्लायर्स को या पेमेंट नहीं किया या कुछ एक्सपायर्ड गुड्स हो गए, उनके रिलेशन में रिवर्सल ऑफ आईटीसी को लेकर हम आज का डिस्कशन स्टार्ट करेंगे। बहुत थोड़ा सा ब्रीफ इंट्रोडक्शन में जरूर देना चाहूंगा दोनों स्पीकर्स के बारे में, ऑल्दो ये बिल्कुल भी रिक्वायर्ड नहीं है, दोनों ही वेल रिनाउंड फैकल्टीज हैं पैन इंडिया लेवल पर। Yes Ji is a fellow member of ICI and he is partner in Dadda & Company. He has a working experience of over 13 years and his major area of practice is indirect taxation. He is basically into litigation handling. And yes, he has been a special invitee in the indirect tax committee of ICI for 3 years. He is also very actively participating in all kinds of seminars, webinars, and he has represented ICI in regional advisory committee at Rajasthan level. Plus, he is also one of the founding core members of study group of ICI on GST research and upgradation matters. Some important words for Devendra Kataria ji also. ये एकदम सिंगल पॉइंट ऑफ कांटेक्ट है, कुछ भी आपको डाउट हो तो बिल्कुल आप दोनों स्पीकर से पूछ सकते हैं। Devendra Kataria ji is a practicing chartered accountant based in Kota. He is also having experience of more than 13 years. He is again contributing a lot in terms of GST expertise as a professional, as an advisor, as a consultant in the field of taxation matters and in various corporates also. He is into litigation as well as consulting as well as compliance. Plus one more point, he has been associated with ICI Kota branch. He has served as secretary there. Presently, he is president of Tax Bar Association Kota. So this is again a very good way to contribute to society. आज दोनों स्पीकर्स ने मिलकर कुछ जुगलबंदी जैसा डिसाइड किया है और दोनों आपस में एक दूसरे से कुछ म्यूचुअल रूप में एक जना क्वेश्चन पूछेगा, दूसरा जना रिप्लाई करेगा, कुछ इंटरेक्टिव प्लेटफॉर्म की तरह हम लोग ये सेशन को आगे बढ़ाते हुए। ओवर टू यू देवेंद्र कटारिया जी।
थैंक यू अंकित जी। फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल मैं सीआईआरसी की पूरी टीम को धन्यवाद देना चाहूंगा कि आप लोगों ने हमें ये मौका दिया टू प्रेजेंट आवर व्यूज ऑन दैट टू द टॉपिक व्हिच वी हैव सिलेक्टेड इज इन द नेम इटसेल्फ, इट्स कंट्रोवर्शियल। और जीएसटी जब से शुरू हुआ है तब से कंट्रोवर्सीज तो चली रही हैं, एंड जब तक कंट्रोवर्सीज हैं तब तक हम लोग की प्रैक्टिस भी है। सो लेट्स होप फॉर द बेस्ट। और जो मेरे आज के फेलो स्पीकर्स हैं, यश डड्डा जी, ही हैज आई एम एसोसिएटेड विद हिम सिंस बिगिनिंग ऑफ माय प्रैक्टिस। इनिशियली हम लोग मिले थे व्हेन ही वाज इन कोटा फॉर स्टूडेंट्स कॉन्फ्रेंस, एंड ही वाज द विनर इन दैट कॉन्फ्रेंस। सो उनका कोटा से बहुत पुराना रिश्ता रहा है, एंड ऑल्सो इन माई डेवलपमेंट, पर्सनल डेवलपमेंट, इनका बहुत बड़ा रोल रहा है। ही हैज सपोर्टेड मी एट वेरियस लेवल्स। आई वाज विद हिम इन द स्टडी ग्रुप, जहाँ ये फाउंडर मेंबर थे, तो हमने बहुत साथ बिताया, एंड ही हैज बीन अ वेरी नाइस पर्सन टू मी। थैंक यू सो मच यश जी फॉर ऑल दैट। सो और आज का जो हमारा सेशन है, दैट इज गोइंग टू बी अ इंटरेक्टिव वन, जिसमें हमने मिलके कुछ स्टडीज, केस स्टडीज तैयार की हैं, विच टॉक अबाउट द कंट्रोवर्शियल इश्यूज इन जीएसटी इन वेरियस एरियाज से। जैसे आपने कहा आईटीसी को लेकर है, इंटरेस्ट को लेकर है, तो बहुत सारी चीजों को, असेसमेंट प्रोसीडिंग्स को लेकर है। तो ये चीजें ऐसी हैं जो प्रैक्टिकली ग्राउंड लेवल पे बहुत chaos क्रिएट कर रही हैं, और इनको समझना बहुत जरूरी है। सो विद दिस, यश जी, योर फ्यू वर्ड्स एंड देन वी कैन बिगिन।
Yeah, absolutely. So just good wishes to all of you, all the office bearers of CIRC and my fellow speaker and a dear friend Devendra ji. First of all, at the outset, I also express my gratitude for giving this opportunity. And the process will be like this, that we'll try and take up the specific issues, or जो हमारे views होंगे, we will share that. In case any member has any question, you may write in the chat box. If it would be relevant to the case study, we'll try and take up at that point of time. Else the time permits, we'll take it at the end of the session. So maybe we can start, Devendra ji.
Okay, so I'm sharing my screen. Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's begin with the controversial issues in GST. जब हम GST का नाम लेते हैं तो सबसे पहले GST का जो सबसे प्राइम इंपॉर्टेंट मैटर है, दैट इज रिलेटेड टू द टैक्सेबल इवेंट, कि GST लगना शुरू कब होता है, एंड दैट कम्स विद सेक्शन 7, दैट इज सप्लाई, एंड रिलेटेड टू इट शेड्यूल 1। तो सेक्शन 7 की अगर हम बात करें तो इट डिफाइंस व्हाट अ टैक्सेबल इवेंट इज, व्हिच इज सप्लाई, एंड इट नॉर्मली सेज कि जब आपके 3 इवेंट्स पूरे हो जाते हैं, दैट पर्टिकुलर ट्रांजैक्शन कैन बी कॉल्ड एज अ सप्लाई। द फर्स्ट इज इट हैज टू बी देयर इज एन आउटवर्ड मूवमेंट ऑफ गुड्स और सर्विसेज और बोथ। Secondly, the outward movement should be for a consideration, and then thirdly, most important, it should be in the course or furtherance of business. अब ये 3 कंडीशंस अगर किसी पर्टिकुलर ट्रांजैक्शन में सेटिस्फाई हो जाती हैं तो वो ट्रांजैक्शन आपका सप्लाई की कैटेगरी में फॉल कर जाता है। नाउ देयर इज एन एक्सेप्शन टू दिस। व्हाट इज द एक्सेप्शन? शेड्यूल 1 में कुछ ट्रांजैक्शंस बताए गए हैं जिनमें कि ये कहा गया है अगर कंसिडरेशन ना भी हो तो भी वो ट्रांजैक्शन सप्लाई की कैटेगरी में आएगा। Now the first controversy which we are dealing, the first problem which we are dealing in GST is related to that particular section 7 and schedule 1. The case study is here in front of you. There is a manufacturing company which manufactures 2 items, right? One is taxable and the other is exempt. Now the head office of the company is situated in Jaipur and the manufacturing plant is situated in Indore. Company has outlets in the state of Rajasthan, MP, UP and Gujarat. अब इनमें से 2 यूनिट्स ऐसे हैं जो राजस्थान और एमपी में जो आउटलेट्स हैं वो सिर्फ टैक्सेबल गुड्स में डील करते हैं, whereas यूपी एंड गुजरात आउटलेट्स आर डीलिंग इन बोथ टैक्सेबल एज वेल एज एग्जेम्प्ट गुड्स। अब जब हम टैक्सेबल और एग्जेम्प्ट दोनों गुड्स की बात कर रहे हैं तो हम किस तरफ जा रहे हैं? वी आर गोइंग टुवर्ड्स आईटीसी रिवर्सल। ठीक है, इफ अ कंसर्न इज प्रोवाइडिंग टैक्सेबल एंड एग्जेम्प्ट सप्लाई, then for common ITC there has to be reversal under rule 42 and 43. अब यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है? The catch is sales and accounts department, they are both operated and managed at the head office level in Jaipur. अब इनके साथ क्या हो गया? ऑडिट हो गई, द डिपार्टमेंट कंडक्टेड एन ऑडिट, और उन्होंने एक ऑब्जेक्शन रेज किया है दैट हेड ऑफिस इज प्रोवाइडिंग सप्लाई टू वेरियस आउटलेट्स, क्योंकि अकाउंटिंग और सेल्स वही डिपार्टमेंट वही है, तो सारे आउटलेट्स की सेल के लिए मार्केटिंग और सेल्स ऑफिस अगर वहां है तो उन एम्प्लॉयज की जो सैलरीज हम दे रहे हैं For that will be considered as a supply, because schedule 1 क्या कहता है? schedule 1 में there is a transaction between distinct persons shall be treated as supply. अब यहाँ पे it is considered that head office is providing services to their outlets which have different GST numbers, and the head office should charge from those outlets for the services provided by head office. Further, अब ये यहां पे बात आती है सेक्शन 15 वैल्यूएशन की, which says अगर सप्लायर और रिसिपिएंट रिलेटेड नहीं है और सिर्फ कंसिडरेशन जो हमें मिला है दैट इज द सोल, द प्राइस इज द सोल कंसिडरेशन, देन जो आपकी ट्रांजैक्शन वैल्यू है उस पर आपका वैल्यूएशन लग जाएगा. लेकिन अगर सप्लायर और रिसिपिएंट रजिस्टर्ड हैं देन यू हैव टू गो टू वैल्यूएशन रूल्स. यहां पे हम बात कर रहे हैं रूल 28 की, which says value of supply of goods or services or both between distinct persons or related persons other than through agent. रूल 28 कहता है कि अगर रिलेटेड पर्संस के बीच ट्रांजैक्शन है, जैसा कि हम बात कर रहे हैं फ्रॉम वन पर्सन टू अनदर पर्सन, डिस्टिंक्ट पर्संस के केस में फ्रॉम हेड ऑफिस जयपुर टू आउटलेट्स, तो यहाँ पे इवन इफ देयर इज नो कंसिडरेशन वी हैव टू गो टू ओपन मार्केट वैल्यू फॉर दैट पर्टिकुलर कंसिडरेशन. नाउ द प्रॉब्लम कमिंग इन दिस केस इज, हमें पहला तो ये क्वेश्चन अराइज होता है कि वेदर हेड ऑफिस इज एक्चुअली गिविंग एनी सर्विसेज टू द आउटलेट्स, जहां पे वो सेल्स और अकाउंट्स डिपार्टमेंट मेंटेन कर रहे हैं. सेकंड, इफ दे आर प्रोवाइडिंग दिस सर्विस व्हाट शैल बी द वैल्यूएशन, ओपन मार्केट वैल्यू या अदरवाइज. नाउ टॉकिंग अबाउट रूल 28 also there is a catch. Second proviso to rule 28 says that in case of related persons, if the recipient is eligible to full ITC, whatever value you declare on the invoice shall be treated as open market value. Right? अब यहाँ पे coming back to our question, two outlets are such which are dealing in both taxable and exempt goods. तो पहला सवाल तो ये कि whether there is a supply of service. Second, if it is a supply of service, what should be the valuation? And third, if there is a, once we take on valuation, how much ITC will be reversed and what will be done? So with this background to this case study, I will now request my fellow speaker CA Yash Dadda ji to put some light on this issue. Yash ji, over to you.
Thank you, Devendra ji. So I think you have nicely put three questions into perspective. जो पहला सवाल आप इस issue पे कह रहे हैं, that is whether there is actually a supply between these two distinct persons. So let's first of all try to address that, and then we'll go to second part and the third part. So as you were speaking and you said one of the most important things in GST is taxable event, which comes from section 9 to identify where is the levy. For that we understand that is supply of goods or supply of service. When we read 7 talks about scope of supply. Now जब हम scope of supply पढ़ते हैं, एक चीज पढ़ के ये तो समझ में आती है that anything which has to be a supply, there have to be two persons, and that is why there was this concept of treating something as a taxing something as a deemed supply, because once under a same pan there are different GST numbers, then because in GST they are treated deemed to be two separate persons, तो दो separate person होने के कारण या deemed होने के कारण इस law में it was understood that any activity or any supply which is taking between these two distinct persons would also be treated as a taxable supply, leviable to tax. Now the important point is, and in fact what we can see on our screen also, Schedule 1 Entry 2 starts with supply of goods or services of both between related person or between distinct persons. So there the deeming fiction is on the aspect, not on the aspect of activity, but the deeming fiction is on the aspect of consideration, that even if there is no consideration, we shall still treat this as if there is a taxable supply which has happened, and then we will find out how a valuation has to take place. That means the first anchor point to identify अगर department इस तरीके के notice issue कर रहा है, for example, if let's say to a head office while at the time of audit they're asking this question, the first point that needs to be understood is, are they able to identify very clearly what is the supply which has happened from the head office to the branches or vice versa. In case of goods, all of us know that's quite easy to understand and it's quite easy to track also, because there is an actual physical movement of goods taking place from one premise or one GSTN to another GSTN. Because the nature of services is as such that they are intangible in nature, hence, if somebody tries to bring in a deeming fiction, like for example, जो facts है इस issue के, वो ये कहते हैं कि because an accounting was done at a centralized level, and because the other branches, they were not doing accounting, hence we shall deem that the accounting has been done by the head office for the branches. Now ये वाला जो aspect है, that we shall deem that accounting has been done by the head office to the branches, fortunately that is not how the entry 2 to the schedule 1 is written, because I'm repeating again, the aspect of business is not deemed, the aspect of activity is not deemed, and in fact the aspect of two persons is also not deemed, because any which way जो दो लोग अलग अलग हैं उनको separate section में identify करके दिया है that for the purpose of this act they shall be treated as two separate persons. The only aspect that needs to be deemed is consideration, that is how a valuation would be done, because ये दो लोग practically दो अलग अलग लोग नहीं है, it is only for the purpose of GST. So as rightly pointed out, I think in this case, the specific facts हैं जिन्होंने बोले that because accounting is done at one place, and whereas the recipient at the other branch may not be doing the accounting, it can't be deemed as such that the accounting services would have been provided by the head office to the branches, because there is no provision for deeming the activity. If you want to take a support for this, is there any legal support? Unfortunately, because this law or this concept of deemed supplies between distinct person is quite new. If we go back to some foreign jurisprudence, इसके ऊपर एक foreign jurisprudence है, it is under Canadian GST. Now, interestingly, like India, Canadian GST also has dual GST, and in fact, world over, सिर्फ दो ही countries ऐसी हैं जहाँ पे dual GST है. Like we have CGST, SGST. Similarly, they also have a federal and a state structure for tax. So there, they also have similar provision. Like we have entry 2 in schedule 1, they have section 220 there in their GST Act. और section 220 basically वो ये डीम करता है कि अगर कोई foreign establishment, एक Canadian establishment को जो एक same company के अंदर है, if they are giving certain services to each other, then how a valuation would be done, and they also talk about fair market value. So in one of the cases, the name of the case is State Farm ET versus the Queen. And the Queen is basically there. The government exchequer is treated as the Queen. The citation, if somebody wants to notice, 2003 GTC 632 or 2003 GSTC 35. There, the issue was exactly same issue, that can there be a deeming fiction in respect of what service a foreign establishment would have given to the Canadian establishment to a company which has two separate GST registrations only. So can there be a deeming fiction for activity, and can there be a deeming fiction for valuation also? And there the court gave a clear answer by saying that the valuation would only come into picture when there is a clear identification of an activity which is done by one establishment to another. There cannot be any deeming fiction of an activity to be done. So just because there is appropriation of cost happening from one branch to another, or just because there is, for example, let's say only one sort of activity is being done centralized at one particular premise, it can't be a basis to say that activity would have happened or the benefit of that would have gone to the branch. So if on the purely legal side, unless the departmental show cause notice or departmental observation is not identifying what is the clear activity which has been done by the HO for the branch, to my understanding, it can't be a case to say that there was some deeming supply which has happened from the head office to branch, and hence it will not fall under entry 2 to the schedule 1. That is one aspect. So that's on the taxability की जब taxability नहीं है तो आपको valuation provisions में जाने की जरूरत नहीं है. In fact, कई बार हम valuation provision से influence होके ये assume कर लेते हैं कि taxability है तभी valuation provisions दिए हुए हैं. But it's actually the vice versa. Once we are able to clearly identify the taxability, then only we can go to the valuation. Coming to the valuation side, what Devendra ji said, let's say for the timing, it is assumed that it is a taxable supply which has happened from HO to the branches. Technically, we should not assume that. Department also can't assume that. But let's say I don't want to go into that argument because it's a long fight, and I want to come to the valuation also. I'm sure all of us are aware that जो देवेंद्र जी का टिपिकल इश्यू वो ये कि जहां सामने वाले को पूरा इनपुट क्रेडिट मिल रहा है वहां वैल्यूएशन इज रियली नॉट अ चैलेंज बिकॉज आई वुड डिटरमाइन वॉट एवर वैल्यू आई वांट टू टेक ऑन द इन्वेस्ट. बट जहां सामने वाले को पूरा इनपुट क्रेडिट नहीं मिल रहा वहां पर वैल्यूएशन रूल्स ही कहते हैं दैट यू हैव टू फॉलो द प्रोसीजर which is given. And the point is to identify what is the open market value of the accounting which has been done by the head office to the branches is next to impossible because uska open market value available nahi hai because that head office is not doing accounting for any other person or any other entity or any other GST. So that is out of question. Second, to identify the value of like kind and quality of that service is also not possible because वो ऐसा काम किसी और के लिए करते नहीं है. Coming to the cost aspect of it, where to say कि चलिए we'll follow rule 31 and we'll take cost plus 10%. There in that case also now we have a circular number 199 and circular number 199 says कि even if अगर सामने वाले recipient को input credit नहीं मिल रहा है, in that case also आप salary का cost को आपको cost में आपको valuation के लिए salary को जोड़ने की जरूरत है. You may not consider salary as one of the component of cost for determining what is going to be the value because it says cost plus 10%. Now, because once I will take out salary also, to my understanding, ये facts के अंदर जो generally एक head office branch के बीच में relationship होता है, कुछ और बचता नहीं है. I can't take the infrastructure cost of the head office और उसका मैं cross charge करूँ by treating it as an accounting service given by the head office to the branch, and I take all ancillary and establishment cost for the purpose of treating it as a cost charge. To my understanding, that would be inappropriate. And last, it says any other method which is consistent with the provisions of valuation rules. There in that case also, what is any other method which is consistent? In this case, I do not have any mechanism to find out what would be the cost in this case. So let's say अगर मैं deem भी कर लेता हूँ that there is an activity, the next subsequent answer in this case would be there is no proper valuation mechanism available, and specifically now after circular number 199 which says I will take out the salary, so maybe the answer would be it will be 0 as cost plus 10% on 0, which will be again 0, and on that 0 I might do the cross charge, but the answer would the end of it would be 0 only. Once I'll do a cross charge for 0, the answer again at the other side would be I need not reverse any ITC in this regard. So on the legal side of it, I think all of us have a lot of support available from the reading of the law, from the foreign jurisprudence to identify if somebody has not done the cross charge and now they have a show cause notice, they have sufficient material available to contest the matter. Probably just one last 30 seconds देवेंद्र जी on probably एक चीज जो डिपार्टमेंट इसमें सही क्वेश्चन पूछ सकता था तब what would have been the appropriate question? The appropriate question would have been if I have claimed any input tax credit as a head office and I am keeping that credit and I do not have an ISD registration, can department ask me that what is the purpose of claiming this input tax credit as a head office when you are not doing cross charge to your branches? How are you going to use that for the outward supplies which you are doing in your head office? Probably वो एक question है which is a very difficult and a typical question in my understanding to answer. But as of now, department is only looking at the easier side of it, how to pick it. कि अच्छा head office है तो head office को तो cross charge करना ही था, नहीं कराया तो let's issue a show cause notice. I think all those show cause notices we can defend them on merits. Anything you want to add?
No, I guess you have summarized it perfectly. We have a candidate who has raised his hand, so shall we take the query or we can continue?
No, we can take the query, no problem.
Okay, Alok ji. Alok ji, can you unmute yourself and speak? Or you can write down your query in the chat box, we'll take it up.
Maybe he'll write in the...
Maybe, huh? Okay, no problem.
He'll take... Right, sir.
So, continuing with our presentation.
Sir, one point.
Ji.
Sir, suppose if there is any service or there is any supply for which there is no OMV available. So whatever amount I am writing, can that become open market value?
So the answer to that depends if it is a transaction between distinct person and the other recipient distinct person is eligible for full input tax credit. तो आप जो बात बोल रहे हैं वो 28 का second proviso आपको support करता है.
नहीं sir, इसी circumstance.
हाँ, so then in that case ओपन मार्केट वैल्यू का क्लियर डेफिनेशन है जो रूल के बाद में लिखा हुआ है. इट सेज कि वही काम मैं अगर किसी और के लिए भी कर रहा हूँ एट द सेम टाइम एंड द सेम वैल्यू इन क्वांटिटी, सो देन इट वुड डिपेंड अपॉन द नेचर ऑफ सर्विस. अब जो फैक्ट्स इसमें दिए हुए हैं उसका तो ओएम भी निकालना इज इम्पॉसिबल. So the answer to that would be कि no, anything which you will write on the invoice would not become the OMB in that case. Clearly not, because सामने वाले is not eligible for full input tax credit. But then the rule says OMB नहीं available है तो बाकी चीजों के अंदर आप जाइए. Now that again depends on the nature of the service. Nature of service कैसा है? Service का nature ही ऐसा नहीं है कि बाकी हम सब चीजों के हिसाब से value निकाल सके. Hence valuation mechanism fails in this case, and that is why there would not be any taxability.
Suppose if it is a case of common advertisement cost.
हाँ, correct sir.
And if I am in a position to appropriate the same in the ratio of turnover or respective branches or respective sale points.
तो आपके क्वेश्चन में एक छुपा हुआ आंसर है. आप कह रहे हैं एडवर्टीजमेंट कॉस्ट जो हेड ऑफिस ने इनकर करी जिसको वो अप्रोप्रिएट कर सकता है. सो वन इज ईदर दे आर वर्किंग एज अ कॉन्डक्ट जहां पे वो कह रहे हैं हम तो खर्चा लेंगे और खर्चा पास ऑन कर देंगे. फॉर दैट वी हैव अ मैकेनिज्म व्हिच इज कॉल्ड एज एन आईएसडी मैकेनिज्म, जो अब आने वाले समय में मैंडेटरी हो जाएगा. दैट्स व्हाट काउंसिल इज सेड. आज की डेट में मैंडेटरी नहीं है. Can I take a view by saying that I have, as a head office, I have received the advertising services and then I have given to my branches? If that being the case, and I have sufficient record available in that regard, then I can definitely say that I have the like, kind, and quality value available. I will take that and then on the basis of it, I will give it to other person. वो अगर exempted के रेशियो में फिर वहां आगे जाके जैसे रिवर्स होना, so their rule 42 would be applicable at the recipient stage. Devendra ji, anything you want to add?
Rule 42 will be applicable in any case, whether you go by ISD or you go by cross charge, because if the outlet is giving exempt supply, you have to ultimately reverse the ITC.
Correct. So that is why then it becomes even more important to identify कि ये actually में transaction taxable है भी या नहीं, और अगर है भी तो इसका valuation हो भी सकता है कि नहीं हो सकता.
सर जैसे कंसोलिडेशन सर्विसेज हैं या ऑडिटर की सर्विसेज हैं, अब ऑडिटर तो एक एक ब्रांच पे जा नहीं रहा है. लेट्स अज्यूम दिस, ठीक है. जैसे टैक्स ऑडिटर तो नहीं जाता है नॉर्मली.
करेक्ट.
तो उस केस में अपन अगेन टर्नओवर के रेशियो में तोड़ के और एटलीस्ट टू अवॉइड द लिटिगेशंस.
हाँ, तो ये आप जो बात बोल रहे हैं प्रोस्पेक्टिव बात बोल रहे हैं, इसमें मैं मना नहीं करती. हम जो मैं जिस पर्सपेक्टिव से बात बोल रहा हूँ, जहां भी एक क्वेश्चन ये था कि ये डिपार्टमेंट की ऑडिट आ गई. नाउ इफ आई विल डू दी क्रॉस चार्ज, फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन विल बी सामने वाले को बिल्कुल इनपुट नहीं मिलने वाला है उस केस के अंदर. So either I am going to pay the tax and that will be, it's better to litigate it in that case because I have sufficient ammunition available to litigate the matter. But going forward आप जो बोल रहे हैं बिल्कुल ठीक है. बस उसमें एक caveat ये है कि next budget के अंदर definitely there is going to be amendment in the provision, और ये जो भी आपने नाम लिए services के, now all of them have to be routed through ISD only. It will not be through this cross charge.
So ISD compliance in near future is going to be a tough one and we have to be very careful. अगर अब अपने ISD का अभी तक तो ठीक है हम नहीं कर पाए तो कोई बात नहीं, पर अब भी अगर हम ISD की कंप्लाइंस नहीं कर रहे हैं तो वी हैव टू बी वेरी केयरफुल इन द कमिंग ईयर्स. जब इस साल की ऑडिट आगे जाके होगी तब हमारे पास जवाब देना बहुत मुश्किल होगा.
Correct, absolutely.
So coming on to the next query, we have PQR Limited with us. ठीक है. अब PQR Limited is a company which is maintaining a canteen for its employees. Now, as per terms of engagement, employees say a nominal amount will be deducted when they are availing the canteen services. Right. Now, during audit, the department has the view that company needs to pay the GST on restaurant services on the market value as the employer and employee are related persons. Now, director of Messrs ABC Limited has approached you for consultancy and please advise what course of action may be taken by the company. Relevant provisions again related to this is section 15, valuation of taxable supply. Explanation to section 15 which defines what is related persons. There it is clearly said employer and employee are related, right? The section 15 subsection clearly defines कि valuation rules में कब जाना है और कब नहीं जाना है. The two conditions, if both the conditions are satisfied, you don't need to go to the valuation rules. If either of the condition is not satisfied, you go to the valuation rules and accordingly you apply those rules. यहाँ पे since employer and employee they are related persons, so this section 15(1) is violated. We have to go to the rules. Rules again we have to talk about rule 28. same rules which we discussed in the previous case study, which says that you have to go open market value, like kind, and according to the cost. Now, here in this case, the situation is slightly different. The company is providing canteen services to its employees as per terms of engagement. जो employee अपनी services दे रहा है employer को, wherein Schedule 3 says the services by an employee to the employer are in the course of employment are not supply at all. So that is the first limb of this transaction. Now, when the company is giving canteen services, whether that can be treated as an allowance to the employee, and this entire transaction can be out of purview of GST, or the company is under obligation to pay GST on that particular amount which has been deducted from the employee's salary. Further, if this company is doing under obligation as per Factories Act 1948, whether the situation changes or it remains the same. Yes, Ji?
Right, sir. So, यहाँ पर because distinct person is not there, probably one thing which is very clear कि एक्टिविटी वाला जो एस्पेक्ट है इसके अंदर वो क्लियरली एस्टैब्लिश्ड है, तो हम उससे ये नाउ दिस बिकम्स ऑन अ बेटर फुटिंग फॉर द डिपार्टमेंट टू से कि इसमें हम कोई डीमिंग एक्टिविटी वाली बात नहीं करें. एक्टिविटी क्लियर है that the employee is eating food and company has engaged the contractor and basically it's a food which is being provided by the company to the employees. In the general parlance also, that's how we understand this. But आपने एक बात बोली, you said that because they are employees of the company and that is why the food facility or the food is being made available to them. Now, from all of us who understand income tax also, in fact, probably you understand better than me and others also, we know that all of these are treated as part of perquisites which are being given by the company to the employees. Where perquisite is just a benefit or a privilege which is being given by the employer to the employee, that may include food facility, house facility, other amenities which would be available. Allowance on the other side would have been कि वो facility नहीं होती है, but इसके against पे एक पैसा दिया जाता है, and probably the canteen would have been run by a third party and then all these employees would have been making payment to that third party. कंपनी का कोई लेना देना नहीं होता है इसके अंदर, right? Now, because this is the amount in this regard is being deducted from the salary या nominal amount charge किया जा रहा है, तो मैं activity identify करूँ. अगर वो सब एस्पेक्ट है ध्यान में और ये चीज हम क्लियरली स्टैब्लिश कर सकते हैं कि परक्विजिट्स है बिकॉज एम्प्लॉयमेंट लेटर के अंदर लिखा होगा, कंपनी की पॉलिसी में लिखा होगा, कंपनी की पॉलिसी एम्प्लॉयमेंट लेटर से का पार्ट होगी. So then we clearly have a circular in this regard, which is circular number 172/4/2022, dated 6th of July 2022, where circular clearly says that as a perquisite, if in case during the course of discharge of my employment services to the company, if any perquisites are given by the company to me, then whatever perquisites are being given, they are technically part of Schedule 3 and hence that would be outside the levy of GST. उसके ऊपर कोई GST की liability आ नहीं सकती. So the simple answer to that would be that we have a circular now. The only thing that needs to be established is it part of a perquisite? If yes, then definitely there should not be any liability. If I take question of देवेंद्र जी to say कि नहीं still I want to pay tax, क्यों देवेंद्र जी ये बात कर रहे हैं वो इसलिए भी समझ में आता है क्योंकि इसके ऊपर conflicting advance rulings हैं. एक एडवांस रूलिंग कहती है कि इसके ऊपर टैक्स लाइबिलिटी है, दूसरी कहती है लाइबिलिटी नहीं है, तीसरी कहती है लाइबिलिटी तो है बट सिर्फ नॉमिनल अमाउंट के ऊपर है, पूरे अमाउंट के ऊपर नहीं. सो वी हैव थ्री डिफरेंट व्यूज. लेट्स से आई टेक अ कंजर्वेटिव व्यू बाय सेइंग कि मुझे झगड़े में नहीं पड़ना, आई वांट टू पे द टैक्स बिकॉज इट वुड बी रेवेन्यू न्यूट्रल. सो माय अंडरस्टैंडिंग इज ये एक ऐसा ट्रांजेक्शन है जिसमें अगर कोई टैक्स पे करने जाता है तो ये रेवेन्यू न्यूट्रल एक्सरसाइज नहीं है. इनफैक्ट इसमें डबल नुकसान है. डबल नुकसान ऐसे है बिकॉज इफ लेट्स से कंपनी इज गोइंग टू पे टैक्स एट द रेट ऑफ 5%, ट्रीटिंग इज एज अ रेस्टोरेंट सर्विस और आउटडोर केटरिंग सर्विस, देन द कंडीशन फॉर पेइंग द टैक्स ऑफ 5% इज दैट नो आईटीसी कैन बी टेकन. तो और कंपल्सरीली कंपनी हैज टू चार्ज 5%. तो कंपनी वो जो 5% चार्ज करेगी टैक्स या जो पे करेगी, डेफिनेटली इट वुड नॉट बी सेरेमोनियल कि वो एम्प्लॉय को बोले कि हम तुमको खाना भी खिलाएंगे और ऊपर से 5% टैक्स का पैसा भी लेंगे. नो एम्प्लॉय वुड लाइक इट. सो क्लियरली दिस 5% वुड गो फ्रॉम द कंपनीज पॉकेट. नाउ सेकेंड, जो पीछे इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट अदरवाइज मिल रहा था, जो देवेंद्र जी ने एग्जांपल दिया कि अगर मैं एक कंपनी हूं जो फैक्ट्रीज एक्ट के अंदर चल रही है, सो वी नो कि ब्लॉक क्रेडिट के अंदर एक एक्सेप्शन है फूड और बेवरेज का क्रेडिट नहीं मिलता, बट अगर वो फूड और बेवरेज इज इन रिस्पेक्ट ऑफ ए कैंटीन विच आई हैव टू मैंडेटली रन अंडर एनी स्पेसिफिक स्टैट्यूट, तो मुझे उसका इनपुट क्रेडिट मिलता है। तो अगर मैं आउटपुट पे टैक्स नहीं दे रहा हूं तो मैं 17.5 से बाहर आ जाता हूँ। एक्सेप्शन के थ्रू आई कम आउट ऑफ इट, आई एम एलिजिबल फॉर द क्रेडिट जो नीचे पीछे मुझसे कॉन्ट्रैक्टर चार्ज कर रहा है। लेट्स से अगर मैं आउटपुट पे टैक्स दे रहा हूं तो भी मैं 17.5 के तो बाहर आ जाता हूं, बट प्रॉब्लम ये है कि मैं बिकॉज 5% टैक्स दे रहा हूं तो 5% टैक्स में कंडीशन ये है कि मैं इनपुट क्रेडिट नहीं ले सकता। मीनिंग देयर बाय अगर मैं आउटपुट पे कंजर्वेटिव साइड पे होकर इसमें टैक्स देने जाता हूं तो मेरे सिर्फ आउटपुट के 5% टैक्स का नुकसान नहीं है, मेरे को अदरवाइज जो इनपुट क्रेडिट मिल रहा था वो इनपुट क्रेडिट का भी नुकसान है। तो अगर कॉन्ट्रैक्टर मुझसे 5% चार्ज करे, टेक्निकली आई एम टेकिंग अ हिट ऑफ 10%. And otherwise, if I look at it, I have a circular number 172 which clearly says that this is not taxable. I need not pay tax. Once I take recourse to circular number 172, I am not saving my 5% on the output. But at the input side also, अगर कोई company factory अगर factories act में चला रही है, then any which way that credit would be available to them. So that's my understanding of this particular issue. Your views, Devendra ji?
Very well, sir. The controversy is because of the different advance rulings which we are having, and one question which always comes to my mind कि advance ruling है क्यों? Whether to give the answer to the questions or to raise more questions.
Multiple reasons, but basically advance ruling is only to the assessee. It is assessee specific.
Yeah, of course, but the department always takes benefit of those कि हम तो केस बनाएंगे साहब वहाँ एडवांस रूलिंग में ये है।
रीजन है ना सर, एडवांस रूलिंग रिपोर्ट हो जाती है। आप अदरवाइज भी आप देखेंगे जॉइंट कमिश्नर लेवल के ऑफिसर्स के और ऑर्डर भी तो पास होते हैं, बट दे डोंट गेट रिपोर्टेड।
They don't get reported.
But this get reported, hence they create the confusion.
Very right, sir. Very right. Okay, let's move on to the next case. In case if any participant has any query about it, please feel free to write in the chat box. We'll take it up. Okay, no problem. See, since almost 6 years have already passed for implementation of GST, and today we are, in the phase जहाँ पे show cause notices की भरमार है, और यहाँ जितने भी पार्टिसिपेंट्स हैं सब में से हर किसी के ऑफिस में एक दो शो कॉज नोटिस आज की तारीख में पेंडिंग है ही है कि इनका जवाब देना है। और वहां जब हम शो कॉज नोटिस पढ़ते हैं तो हमेशा ये जब जहन में आता है कि अब इसका क्या जवाब देना है, लॉ में क्या प्रोविजंस हैं, और कौन सा केस लॉ हमें कुछ मिल सकता है क्या। तो टुडेज वेबिनार इज बेसिकली फोकसिंग ऑन दोज इश्यूज जहां पे आपको केस स्टडीज, जहां पे आपको नोटिस मिले होंगे, and we have tried to take up all the practical aspects. The next aspect which we are going to take up is that a company has received a show cause notice for disallowance of ITC. और disallowance of ITC के लिए तो I can guarantee every office must be having at least 10 notices in that regard. तो ITC के जब भी हम ITC की बात करते हैं तो एक ITC तो याद आती है कंपनी जो रिलैक्स करवाती है, और एक दूसरा ITC जो GST में है जो स्ट्रेस लेके आता है। Here we are talking about section 16 जहां पे डिपार्टमेंट इज वेरी stringent कि हमें ये disallowance करना ही है, and the grounds which they take up are like anything. The grounds in this particular show cause notice which we are taking as the case study is the first, they are saying कि भाई साहब GST 2A में आपकी ITC रिफ्लेक्ट नहीं हो रही, हम आपको ITC नहीं देंगे। इसके अलावा दे डू नॉट कोट एनी अदर ग्राउंड। मतलब क्यों, मतलब GST 2A में अगर आ रही है तो भी क्या इज इट अ वैलिड ITC? फर्स्ट आंसर दैट क्वेश्चन। मैं तो कह रहा हूँ GST 2A में ITC आ गई, फिर भी क्या मेरी सेक्शन 16 की अगर कंडीशन फुलफिल नहीं होती है तो भी क्या ITC दे दोगे क्या? डिपार्टमेंट हैज नो आंसर टू दैट क्वेश्चन। दे ओनली से भाई साहब 2A में नहीं आ रही ना, हम नहीं देंगे, सीधी बात है। नेक्स्ट डे से कि चलो 2A में आ गई, पर अब 2A में एक नया क्लॉज, एक नया कॉलम जुड़ गया है जो बताता है कि आपके सप्लायर ने 3B फाइल किया है या नहीं किया है। Now in that case, if the supplier has not filed 3B, it means the payment has not been made. And if the payment has not been made, this violates condition section 16(2)(c) which says the supplier must make payment of tax to the government. तो वो कंडीशन वायलेट हो गई, उस केस को लेके आपके पास ITC के नोटिस आ रहे होंगे। The third kind of ground which is that सप्लायर का GST रजिस्ट्रेशन रेट्रोस्पेक्टिव डेट से कैंसिल हो गया है। मतलब जिस टाइम का मेरा इनवॉइस है उस टाइम का रिटर्न्स भी फाइल्ड हैं, 1 3B is filed, it means he has paid the tax, but later on, for some reason not known to anybody, the registration is cancelled retrospectively. Now on that ground, my ITC is being denied, that we cannot give you this ITC because the supplier is not in existence. The fourth ground is, which is like, I have filed my own return beyond the date which is allowed under section 16(4). जो पहले it was due date of September month, now it is 30th November of next year. And the very question on the 16(4) is, recently a High Court judgment has said that this time limit is constitutional and ITC cannot be taken beyond that. हालांकि वो जजमेंट में ITC टेकन और ITC अवेल्ड के ऊपर मुझे नहीं लगता शायद उन्होंने कुछ डिस्कस किया है। यस जी?
नहीं सर, कुछ नहीं किया।
नहीं किया। The absolute difference in two words, if a law is using two words, that means it has to be some reasoning behind that. ठीक है, section 16(4) word use करता है cannot take ITC, whereas the entire rest of the act जहां पे भी ITC की बात हो रही है, it talks about ITC availment or utilization. All these confusions, and with the High Court judgment in against, we are waiting for the Supreme Court judgment, and I will like to request Yash to please put on some lights on these. The relevant provisions are like section 16(2) AA. अच्छा, this is also very important. This clause ये कहता है कि सेक्शन 31 के अंदर जो GSTR 1 फाइल हुआ है उसके हिसाब से आपको इंफॉर्मेशन पहुंच जानी चाहिए, मतलब आपके 2A 2B में रिफ्लेक्ट हो जाना चाहिए. This is inserted by Finance Act 21, which is effective from 1st of January 22. पर इसी के बेसिस पे नोटिस हमारे पास तो जुलाई 17 से ही आ रहे हैं. ठीक है, चलो मान लिया कि 1 जनवरी 2022 से ये कंडीशन आ गई. Second question is whether this condition is constitutional or not. You are again penalizing me for the wrongdoing of someone else. सामने वाले ने अगर 1 फाइल नहीं किया, या सामने वाले ने टैक्स पे नहीं किया, या उसने 1 में B2B की जगह B2C में डाल दिया, is it my fault? And then the government has taken up a step ahead by notifying section 38, जहां पे उन्होंने 6 और कंडीशंस बता दी कि अगर सप्लायर ने ये गलती कर दी तो भी हम आपको ही पकड़ेंगे. What is the reasoning behind that? That is out of my reasoning. Then we have section 16(2)(c). अब ये ऐसा प्रोविजन है जिसको पहले अर्लियर regime में Supreme Court has clearly said that it is unconstitutional. In case of Delhi VAT and Arise India judgment, Supreme Court clearly has said that this provision is unconstitutional and cannot be imposed. कुछ टाइम बाद वापस GST में सेम प्रोविजन लेकर आते. And then we have section 16(4) which talks about entitled to take input tax credit. Now, using this word take in the law, whether it was intentional or whether there was some reasoning behind it, I don't know. We have some judgments also. Arise India, which was pre-GST, which has held that it is unconstitutional. Then in GST regime, we have Bharti Airtel, which says GSTR 2A is just a facilitator and nothing else. Then we have DY Bethel Enterprises from Madras High Court, which again says कि आप जब तक सप्लायर के ऊपर आप प्रोसीडिंग्स नहीं कर सकते, जब तक आपकी सप्लायर से रिकवरी खत्म नहीं हो जाती, तब तक यू कैन नॉट कम टू रिसिपिएंट. Under light of these judgments, I will now request DSG to please put some light on these aspects.
Right. Maybe we can go back to the previous slides, sir, so that we'll be able to link clearly. Or the issues. Yes. Okay. This. So I think Devendra ji has rightly summed it up that the purpose for which the GST provisions, GST was brought in India. In fact, if somebody would read the statement of object जब constitutional amendment bill लाया गया था, that was basically to remove the cascading effect and to have the seamless flow of input tax credit. And the purpose was basically to have only tax the value addition. Interestingly, all of us understand that value addition के ऊपर टैक्स तभी हो सकता है जब इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट आप मुझे अलाउ करें जो मैं पीछे पे करके आया. And wherever there is going to be dent in that input tax credit, clearly that the statement of object which was brought in, that gets defeated there. In fact, आप जब CGST Act का statement of object पढ़ते हैं, that echoes what was mentioned in the constitutional amendment bill also. Maybe so this becomes a valid point to start the conversation to say that why all these issues in respect of input tax credit would be bogus issues, or not bogus, probably the word would not be bogus, but all those issues which hurts the purpose with which the GST was brought in India. Having said that, it is also important to understand that whenever we read law, though we have statement of object in front of us, but whenever we read any provision, it has to be read literally. And in case then there is any ambiguity, then you would go to other rules of interpretation to identify and understand that what it tries to say. So this aspect, whether input tax credit is my right or whether input tax credit is my asset, whether input tax credit is my property, or input tax credit is just a benefit or a concession which has been given under the law, that would depend upon how do we read 16.1 and 16.2. बिकॉज हम जब वो चीज के ऊपर क्लियर हैं या वो चीज की हमारी रीजनिंग क्या है, वो डिसाइड करेगी हाउ डू वी अप्रोच ऑल दीज इश्यूज व्हिच कम बिफोर अस थ्रू अ शो कॉज नोटिस और मे बी इन एनी अदर प्रोसीडिंग. If I say that input tax credit or whatever tax has been charged by the supplier on the invoice and the invoice which he has given to me is my right, then जो देवेंद्र जी बात करें मैं उससे 100% अग्री करूंगा हर एस्पेक्ट में. और ये सब अलग अलग इश्यूज के ऊपर आगे जाने की जरूरत नहीं. आई वुड से वंस आई हैव पेड दैट अमाउंट टू माय सप्लायर एंड सप्लायर हैज चार्ज टैक्स फ्रॉम मी, देन एवरीथिंग एल्स एंड्स देयर एंड देयर ओनली. तो मुझे कुछ और देखने की जरूरत ही नहीं है, बिकॉज वंस वो मेरा राइट बन गया वहां पे, तो मेरा तो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनली आई एम प्रोटेक्टेड अंडर आर्टिकल 300A to say that it is my right to property which cannot be taken away from me because it would vest with me. However, 16.1 जिस तरीके से लिखा हुआ है and 16.2 जिस तरीके से लिखा हुआ है, read with the other 16.3 and 16.4, I would understand जब तक जो condition 16.2 में लिखी हुई है, till the time I'm not satisfying those conditions, input tax credit till that point of time does not become my right. It does not become my property. It still remains a benefit or a concession which has been given by government to me. And because it is a concession or a benefit which has been given by government to me, government is right in their wisdom to apply whatever conditions they want to put in, so that once I satisfy that, then only it would become my right. But once it becomes my right after satisfying the conditions, then through any machinery provision, procedural provision, other compliances, non-compliances, that right cannot be taken back. So this aspect is very important कि जब तक मैं condition satisfy नहीं कर रहा हूँ, the manner in which it is written, it is not my right, it is an entitlement which has been given, or in a simple language, it's a benefit for which I have to satisfy the condition. However, then comes the important aspect which Devendra ji was saying कि अगर ये condition भी है, तो condition कितनी constitutional है और कंडीशंस को किस तरीके से कितना उस सर्कमफेरेंस में देखा जाए जो मेरे कंट्रोल में है या जिनको मैं कंप्लाई कर सकता हूं, समथिंग व्हिच इज डिपेंडेंट ऑन मी. एंड इफ लेट्स से समथिंग व्हिच आई हैव टू कंप्लाई depending upon what other person is saying, then whether the government who is putting those conditions is providing me necessary infrastructure, platform or facility otherwise, so that I can comply to that condition with my reasonable controls or within my reasonable limits. And this aspect is that particular discussion where all of us say कि जहां पर सप्लायर ने अगर कोई गलती कर दी है तो मेरा इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट आपको नहीं लेना चाहिए वापस, या ये इसको मेरा एसेट बनने से, मेरा राइट बनने से नहीं रोकना चाहिए. बिकॉज अगर आपने कंडीशन लगाई तो उस कंडीशन को लगाने के साथ साथ आपको मुझे वो नेसेसरी इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर देने की जरूरत भी थी कि मैं उसको क्लेम करने से पहले चेक या वेरीफाई कर सकता था. ये मैं किस एस्पेक्ट के लिए बोल रहा हूँ? I am saying it from the perspective of 16.2C first of all, where supplier has not filed GSTR 3B. And all of us know that only from October 2023, we have provision which now where there is amendment in section 41, and there is a subsequent insertion of rule 37A, which says once, let's say, I've claimed the input tax credit and supplier has not filed GSTR 3B, और वो जो उसने GSTR 3B फाइल नहीं करा है वो मेरे GSTR 2A में दिखेगा. साल खत्म होने की 6 महीने तक अगर वो नहीं फाइल कर रहा है अपना GSTR 3B, तो मेरे 2A में अगर वो दिख रहा है 3B not filed, then in that case I have to reverse my input tax credit whatever I have claimed, and they have brought this to section 41 read with rule 37A. Point is, ये वो compliance है going forward which I can do where I'm claiming the credit, but system is providing me or giving me a platform or a report where I can go back and check whether supplier has filed 3B or not. Because the supplier has not filed 3B and I get to know it at a subsequent date, still government is giving me 2 months where I can pursue the supplier. In case he doesn't do it, then I have to reverse the credit. So my understanding in this case would be that at least for all the periods prior to 1st of October 2023, because I did not have any facility at all where I could have find out, understood, gauged it, whether a supplier has paid tax, whether supplier did pay tax through 3B, whether supplier has paid tax through DRC 03, whether supplier has paid tax through garnishee provisions or otherwise. Because I was not privy to that, this was something which was beyond my control. This was something which government was expecting from me and which was impossible in nature, and hence I could not comply to it. So where just because supplier has not paid the tax, I think where facility was not available, my credit cannot be taken away. That probably in my understanding would be answered. Where what Devendra ji was also saying in respect of Arise India, Arise India mein one of the arguments to treat it as unconstitutional was whether it was in my control or whether I was privy to that information at the time of claiming my input tax credit. That's number one. However, government does not, or at least show cause notices does not only say that supplier has not filed 3B. If the show cause notice only saying supplier not filed 3B, I think all of us have a good case to argue. Please tell us how was I able to identify that, and because I couldn't do that, this is something which is beyond my control. Majority notices are between what is not reflecting in my 2A. All of us know 2A comes from 1 and 1 and 3B are different. आंसर टू दिस इज वेरी सिंपल. देवेंद्र जी ने दे दिया कि जो प्रोविजन है कि 1 में आएगा और आपको रिफ्लेक्ट दिखना चाहिए, इट केम फ्रॉम जनवरी 2022 ओनली. So all the notices which are before January 2022. Simple answer to that is, where is the mother provision? There is no mother provision in the act for this. And that is why you would look at it. जो सर्कुलर नंबर 183 है, तो ये कहता है कि चलो ठीक है, आपके 2A में नहीं भी दिख रहा था जनवरी 22 से पहले, तो कोई बात नहीं, आप एक सामने वाले का सर्टिफिकेट लेके आ जाइए. दिस इज नथिंग एल्स बट इट इज जस्ट अ मैकेनिज्म वेयर गवर्नमेंट इज सेइंग कि जो अमाउंट्स के ऊपर अननेसेसरीली, बिकॉज एट सम पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम ऑल कोर्ट्स विल से दैट फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल the revenue has to bring out where is a provision in the law. जब तक provision नहीं है तब तक वो condition मेरे ऊपर apply ही नहीं कर सकते, because condition तो 16(2) में लिखी हुई है. Just by virtue of rule 36(4) is there a rule. All of us know that a subordinate legislation cannot override the mother provision. Hence 2A में नहीं था before January 22. Very difficult to actually argue. तो जितने भी notices 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20, 2021 के हैं up till this December 21, चाहे अगर आप सर्कुलर का बेनिफिट लेके सर्टिफिकेट लाके क्लोज करा सकते हैं, वेल एंड गुड. नहीं भी ला सकते हैं, स्टिल यू हैव अ वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग लीगल केस टू आर्ग्यू, बट ऑब्वियसली आपको लड़ना थोड़े ऊपर के लेवल तक पड़ेगा. 2A में आ रहा है, 3B में नहीं आ रहा. दैट आई हैव ऑलरेडी आंसर टू माय अंडरस्टैंडिंग. रेट्रोस्पेक्टिव कैंसिलेशन, अगेन वेरी फनी. At the date where supplier has charged tax from me, status में दिख रहा है उसने return file करा है, but due to some of his non-compliance which he would have done, which may not be related to me, his registration is cancelled retrospectively. It cannot be assumed that supplier has not paid the tax. In fact, government has to come out and explain to me by saying that how would you establish that he has not paid the tax when I have necessary all other evidences available with me कि उसने 2A file करा है, उसका 3B filing status yes है, and just because registration is cancelled. We have LGW Industries, Calcutta High Court, which in fact is on the same lines, which say just because registration has been cancelled, that does not effectively means that supplier would not, that the credit is not available to me, but other factor needs to be identified, verified at the time of assessment, and then only a speaking order needs to be passed. This can't be one specific case to one specific reason to say कि credit would not be available. I think if I'm not wrong, there is one more judgment, श्रद्धा ओवरसीज. श्रद्धा ओवरसीज में भी पासिंग कमेंट यही है कोर्ट का. कोर्ट ये कहता है कि रजिस्ट्रेशन कैंसिल हुआ कैनॉट बी अ सोल रीजन, बट देयर हैज टू बी स्पीकिंग ऑर्डर टू से कि क्या और रीजन थे जिस कारण से वुड नॉट अलाउ मी द इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट. लास्ट विच इज रिटर्न्स नॉट फाइल्ड बाय रिसिपिएंट. आई थिंक ये एक ऐसा कंटेंशियस इशू है which all of us are facing, where there has been delay in filing of returns in the initial years, and now that delay is haunting all of us, where the delay has been beyond that statutory time limit of whatever for due date of filing of 3B for the month of September, and because uske baad filing hui hai, so then it becomes a problem. देवेंद्र जी ने 2 हाई कोर्ट जजमेंट्स का रेफरेंस दिया. वन वाज आई थिंक तिरुमलाई कोंडा ऑफ आंध्र प्रदेश हाई कोर्ट एंड वन इज गोविंदा कंस्ट्रक्शन इन पटना हाई कोर्ट. दोनों केसेस के अंदर the issue was that the government, at least what was done, the petitioner has challenged the virus of section 16 subsection 4. So they were not saying कि words को कैसे interpret करना चाहिए. In fact, in the chat box also Viren Parwal sir has basically brought that point by saying entitled to take जो 16(1) में word लिखा हुआ है, whereas हम जब show cause notices वगैरह देखते हैं section 73 या 74 में, तो क्रेडिट अवेल्ड की बात करते हैं. तो टेकन और अवेल्ड में क्या डिफरेंस है, 16(4) में टेक का क्या मतलब माना जाएगा, वो सब चीज के ऊपर आर्गुमेंट नहीं था कोर्ट में. कोर्ट में सेक्शन 16(4) को चैलेंज करा गया था, ये कहते हुए कि अनरीजनेबल है, अनकॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल है, ये 16(2) को ओवरराइड नहीं कर सकता. और वंस मैंने अगर 16(2) की कंडीशंस को सेटिस्फाई कर दिया तो मुझे 16(4) को देखने की जरूरत नहीं. इट इज मोर प्रोसीजरल इन नेचर. वन ऑफ द अदर आर्ग्यूमेंट्स वर आल्सो दैट कि अगर मैंने लेट फीस पे कर दी है और मैंने रिटर्न फाइल कर दिया लेट फीस के साथ में, so then the matter ends, फिर मेरी रिटर्न मान लिया जाएगा कि टाइमली फाइल हुई और मेरे ऊपर 16(4) लगता नहीं है, या फॉर दैट मैटर 16(4) का जो टाइम लिमिट है दैट इज ड्यूली कंप्लाइंट. एंड द कोर्ट सेड दैट दिस प्रोविजन इज नॉट अनकॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल. इसका वायरस, इट इज इंट्रा वायरस नॉट अल्ट्रा वायरस. But the point to understand here at the lower level is, to my understanding again, what Devendra ji was also saying, the words which have been used under section 16 subsection 4 is credit taken and not credit availed. Now, is there a difference between two? Well, उसके लिए आपको लॉ में जाके थोड़ा रिसर्च करना पड़ेगा and you have to identify कि अलग अलग कॉन्टेक्स्ट में ये वर्ड अलग अलग लिखा गया है. जैसे 16(4) में टेकन वर्ड है, आप सेक्शन 18 पढ़िए, 18 में 1 पढ़िए, 2 पढ़िए, 3 पढ़िए, वहां सब जगह क्रेडिट टेकन वर्ड लिखा हुआ है. आप सेक्शन 73 पढ़िए, 74 पढ़िए, वहां पे क्रेडिट अवेल्ड वर्ड लिखा गया है. आप जीएसटीआर 9 में टेबल 6 पढ़िए जो आईटीसी के रिकंसिलिएशन की बात करता है, वहां पे भी क्रेडिट अवेल्ड वर्ड लिखा गया है. आप सेक्शन 41 की बात करिए, प्री अमेंडमेंट टेकन वर्ड है, पोस्ट अमेंडमेंट अवेल्ड वर्ड है. तो लॉ मेकर्स ने अपने विजडम में अगर अलग अलग जगह पर अलग अलग शब्दों का इस्तेमाल किया है या चयन किया है, दैट मीन्स दे हैव in their understanding or from their perspective of it, there was different scope for the purpose of writing these words. What is credit taken? If you look at it, we have a judgment from Bharti Airtel Supreme Court where somebody, भारती went to the court, to the Delhi High Court to say कि हमारी 2A में क्रेडिट नहीं आ रही थी, इसलिए हमने पहले कैश में टैक्स जमा कराया, बाद में क्रेडिट आ गई तो हमने क्रेडिट से पे करा और हमें रिफंड चाहिए कैश का, और दिल्ली हाई कोर्ट ने रिफंड भी दिया. डिपार्टमेंट सुप्रीम कोर्ट गया तो वहां पे सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने बोला दैट फर्स्ट यू टेक क्रेडिट नॉट ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ व्हाट इज अपीयरिंग इन योर 2A, but you can take credit on the basis of what is there in your books of account. And I think that's the anchor point to start the conversation by saying 16(4) की applicability अगर हमको देखनी है, we have to look at that credit taken has to be there in my books of account or it has to be there in my GSTR 3B. The answer to that would be, अगर हम पुरानी regime से देखें in Senvad credit specifically, Senvad credit में there are multiple judgments which says that if the Senvad credit was there in my books of account as per rule 9, I think the judgment is Toyota and Mercedes, both judgments are in this regard. जैसे ही क्रेडिट आपकी अगर बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट के अंदर है, then that means you have claimed the credit within the time limit. Look it from the GST perspective and you go to rule 36 sub rule 2, very important. 36 sub rule 2 जो amend हुआ है from 1st of October 2023. If I'm not wrong, not 23 or 22, I might be missing the date, but it is either this 23 or 22. तो उसके पहले तक द रूल ऑलवेज सेट कि आप जो भी इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट ले रहे हैं, इट वुड बी फाइनल ओनली व्हेन उसका सारा कंटेंट आपके इनवॉइस पे है एंड दोस कंटेंट इज आल्सो अपीयरिंग इन जीएसटीआर 2. माइंड यू, जहां जहां जीएसटीआर 2 का रेफरेंस हटाना था रूल्स में से, वहां सब जगह हटा दिया. सिर्फ 2 रूल थे जहां पे जीएसटीआर 2 का रेफरेंस नहीं हटाया. वन वाज 36(2), वन वाज 37. 36(2) में ये बोला आपका क्रेडिट फाइनल तभी माना जाएगा जब वो क्रेडिट का डिटेल्स आपके जीएसटीआर 2 में रिफ्लेक्ट होगा. एंड ऑल ऑफ अस नो कि जीएसटीआर 2 को सिर्फ पोस्टपोन करती रही गवर्नमेंट ने कभी हटाया नहीं. मीनिंग thereby till 2022 government always understood that credit will appear in GSTR 2 or there will be a compliance of GSTR 2. So till the time there is no GSTR 2, whatever credit I am claiming, it's a provisional credit. प्रोविजनल क्रेडिट के ऊपर 16.4 नहीं लग सकता, बिकॉज 16.4 इन रिस्पेक्ट ऑफ द इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट टेकन, एंड वंस यू लुक एट इट, इट हैज टू बी अ फाइनल क्रेडिट. So that is another aspect that needs to be taken care of and understood in this regard. So my understanding is completely in sync with what Devendra ji is saying, कि अगर जब तक मेरी बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट में वो क्रेडिट नहीं है, अगर मेरी बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट में टाइमली वो क्रेडिट है, आई हैव अ गुड केस टू आर्ग्यू. मुझे सेक्शन 16.4 चैलेंज करने की जरूरत ही नहीं है. आई हैव टू जस्ट एक्सप्लेन दैट व्हाट आई हैव फैक्चुअली डन इन माय बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट, एंड दैट वुड बी सफिशिएंट. इफ नॉट, if I'm going to challenge the section, then there is a problem. Now 2 high courts have not agreed to it. So that is my understanding of these 3-4 issues. Probably if I missed anything, Devendra ji, most welcome, you can add your point.
You have definitely covered everything, Yesh bhai. One thing I would like to add, अभी जो शो कॉज नोटिसेस आ रहे हैं उसकी लैंग्वेज पे अगर हम गौर करें, तो when they are quoting section 16.4, they are not saying taken, they are saying it is availed in the show cause notice, and also if the order has been received by you, वहां आपको दिखेगा the language they have changed. They have changed the language of the law and they are saying availed. I don't know how they can do it. I mean,
they understand taken and availed are synonyms to each other, and I think
yeah,
that's where our role comes in, and we understand
exactly,
that
yes.
they have a different purpose altogether.
Okay. So any query with the I don't think यश भाई के इतने बड़े deliberation के बाद कोई query होगी, but still anybody want to ask any question, please, most welcome. Okay, let's move further. Right, now we have again section 16 subsection 2 and second proviso, which says that we have to make payment to the supplier within 180 days. This particular provision also has been a roller coaster ride, जिसमें इन्होंने रूल 37 बाद बीच में अमेंड किया था. अमेंड करने के बाद बीच में 1-1.5 महीने का गैप आया जहां पे प्रोपोर्शनेट खत्म हो गया. बाद में ये वापस इन्होंने अमेंड किया कि नहीं नहीं साहब प्रोपोर्शनेट मिल जाएगा. So it has been a roller coaster ride itself. So first जो मेरे दिमाग में क्वेश्चन आता है, what is the use of this provision in GST law when the purpose of law is to implement and collect GST? What is the purpose behind this provision when we have MSME acts which gives only 15 or 45 days? यहाँ तो फिर भी ये 180 days दे रहे हैं. So what is the purpose? First question. Second question which comes to my mind is, if I have not made payment to my supplier, then I am using his money, right? Why is government charging interest from me? I'm not able to understand this logic. What is the shortfall of revenue to the government that they are charging interest on somebody else's money? They can put a condition that I have to reverse my ITC, that is agreed. I have to reclaim once I make the payment to the supplier, that is also agreed. But where is the reasoning or where is the logic to put interest on that? That is out of my working. So now in this particular case, we have Mr. A, जिनकी books में ये पता चला है that he has made payment to suppliers beyond 180 days. Okay, no problem. Now the department view is, you have to reverse that ITC since you have not reversed it till date, and since you are reversing it now, you have to pay interest till today, and then as per rule 37 you can reclaim it, क्योंकि reclaim के लिए कोई time limit नहीं है. So that they are on the same page, but they are saying you have to reverse the ITC today along with interest, and then you can reclaim. Now the question arises, पहला तो ये कि इंटरेस्ट लग रहा है नहीं लग रहा है वो एक अलग चीज है. मान लेते हैं कि इंटरेस्ट लग रहा है, तो इंटरेस्ट किस टाइम पीरियड के लिए लगना चाहिए? फ्रॉम डेट ऑफ इनवॉइस टिल डेट ऑफ रिवर्सल. सेकंड, फ्रॉम डेट ऑफ इनवॉइस टिल डेट ऑफ पेमेंट टू द सप्लायर, और from the date when 180 days are over till the date payment is made to the supplier. These three scenarios can be there. Further, in my personal experience, when I argued कि भैया हमें आपने ITC को रिवर्स करने का ऑप्शन कहाँ दिया? रूल 37 में लिखा हुआ है कि you have to reverse your ITC in GSTR2 and it should be added in the output tax liability. Interestingly, they came up कि इसमें लिखा हुआ है ना to be added to the output tax liability, तो 3B में आपको ऐड करना था. Then again I argued कि 3B में आउटपुट टैक्स एडेड तब अपने आप आता था जब आपका GSTR2 हो ना. GSTR2 में अगर हम रिवर्सल में दिखाएंगे it will be added to the output tax liability in GSTR 3. When you have not given any mechanism to us for the reversal, now how are you charging interest from us? Further, output tax liability they have very straight away said. अच्छा, मैंने एक और ये बात ये भी कही कि मान लीजिए जिस महीने में मैंने अपने सप्लायर को पेमेंट कर दिया, मैंने तो वहीं अपनी बुक्स में आईटीसी रिवर्स की, वहीं आईटीसी वापस रिक्लेम कर ली और सेम अमाउंट मैंने 3B में क्लेम कर लिया, मैटर क्लोज्ड. So they are saying नहीं, you have to specifically add your reversal to the output tax liability and then you have to fulfill the compliance. Although all the experts have different views, and I would also like to ask Yash bhai, what is your view on this? Yash ji?
नहीं, आपने जो बोला वही मेरा आंसर था. मैं कहता हूँ चलिए पर्पस पे मैं नहीं जाता हूँ, मे बी टू स्मॉल टू से व्हाट वुड हैव बीन इंटरेस्ट लगेगा नहीं लगेगा, ऑल दोस थिंग. बट पहली चीज सेक्शन में दो चीज पे बात करते हैं. सेक्शन सेज व्हेन देयर इज अ फेलियर टू मेक पेमेंट, सो इट स्टार्ट्स विद द वर्ड फेलियर and somebody has to explain what does the word failure means. Failure means when I'm put to test and I do not qualify in the test, that technically means failure. Now, when I was supposed to make payment within 180 days, was I put to test by the recipient, by the supplier, that I have to make payment within 180 days? Simple meaning, क्या हमारा credit terms वैसा था? अगर हमारा credit terms ऐसा था कि मेरे को 6 महीने के अंदर पेमेंट करना था और मैंने पेमेंट नहीं किया, then in that case I understand कि पहला जो मेरा hurdle है वहां पे आके मैं stuck हो गया कि then in that case मेरे को गवर्नमेंट ने 180 डेज का विंडो दे रखा है. अगर वो 180 डेज का विंडो ब्रीच हो जाता है तो मेरा नॉन कंप्लायंस तो इनिशिएट हो गया. बट फॉर दैट द क्रेडिट पीरियड हैज टू बी less than 180 days. If my credit period is more than 180 days, or let's say my supplier is not asking for money, my supplier is absolutely fine if I am making payment after 180 days, he says he is giving me extra time, I think वो second proviso के अंदर मैं आता ही नहीं हूँ, I don't enter into it, तो बाकी सब चीजों की जरूरत ही नहीं पड़ती. इसको अगर किसी को कंपेयर करना हो तो सेनवैट क्रेडिट रूल्स के अंदर रूल 4 में सेम प्रोविजन था जहां पे लिखा था वेयर द पेमेंट इज नॉट मेड विद इन 90 डेज, तो सेनवैट क्रेडिट रिवर्स करने की जरूरत है. देयर द वर्डिंग वाज पेमेंट नॉट मेड, एंड हियर द वर्डिंग इज वेयर देयर इज अ फेलियर टू मेक पेमेंट. दोनों में बहुत डिफरेंस है. सो वहां पर इवन इफ लेट्स से क्रेडिट पीरियड वाज मोर देन 90 डेज, स्टिल रिवर्सल वाज रिक्वायर्ड. इन दिस केस जब तक मेरा क्रेडिट पीरियड नहीं आता तब तक कोई जरूरत नहीं है. मान लीजिए मेरा क्रेडिट पीरियड 180 डेज से कम है, then comes the very important aspect जिसके बारे में देवेंद्र जी ने बोला, that the section says or the proviso says that it has to be added to my output tax liability. And if it has to be added in my output tax liability, then in that case where is the mechanism available? GSTR 1 में तो मैं कर नहीं सकता. GSTR 3B में मैं आउटपुट लाइबिलिटी में कैसे ऐड करूं? क्योंकि अगर मैं ITC में नीचे जाके रिवर्सल में दिखा दूं तो आई एम रिवर्सिंग माय इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट, and nowhere in the law it is written that is called as adding to the output tax liability. जो डिपार्टमेंटल ऑफिसर ने देवेंद्र जी को सजेस्ट करा कि आप इसको अपने 3.1A में दिखा दो, अपनी आउटवर्ड की लाइबिलिटी में ऐड कर दो, probably there the departmental officer has to read what is the instruction of the form. Instruction of the form 3.1A says details of outward supplies. It does not talk about details of output tax liability. It talks about outward supplies, and clearly this tax is not related to my outward supplies. तो ये 3.1A में भी नहीं जा सकता. मीनिंग thereby आउटवर्ड वाली साइड पे जा नहीं सकता. ITC रिवर्सल अगर मैं करता हूं तो मैं सेक्शन से नॉन कंप्लायंस कर रहा हूं इधर. थर्ड, GSTR 2 लिखा हुआ था, पिछले साल GSTR 2 का रेफरेंस हटाया अक्टूबर 22 के बाद. मीनिंग देयर बाय अक्टूबर 22 का तो हमको जो भी डिटेल दिखाना है वो GSTR 2 में दिखाना है. जब भी GSTR 2 आएगा, जब तक नहीं आता दैट मींस गवर्नमेंट हैज गिवन मी दैट पर्टिकुलर लीवे दैट लेट दैट GSTR 2 कम. व्हेन इट विल कम आई विल श्योर, तब मैं इंटरेस्ट वगैरह सब कुछ पे करूंगा. बट आज की डेट में है नहीं, इसलिए है नहीं, तो आई एम नॉट रिक्वायर्ड टू डू दैट. एक बार के लिए वो छोड़ देते हैं. एक बार के लिए मान के चलते हैं कि चलिए वो बात भी ठीक है कि मेरे को 3B में दिखाना था और GSTR 2 में दिखाने का कोई जरूरत नहीं. GSTR 2 तो बिल्कुल कहने के लिए थ्योरेटिकल बात है. बट स्टिल अगर मैं 3B में दिखाता हूं और जो सेक्शन में लिखा था उन दोनों के बीच में इनकंसिस्टेंसी थी. अगर मैं 3B में रिवर्सल में दिखाता हूं तो मेरी आउटपुट में ऐड नहीं हो रहा. गवर्नमेंट को ये चीज रियलाइज हुई, इसीलिए दैट इज व्हाई इन फाइनेंस एक्ट 2023 they made a specific amendment in second proviso to 16(2) by saying it will be reversed in the return in the manner as prescribed, and then उन्होंने rules में जाके वहां पे लिखा it will be reversed in GSTR 3B. So now October 2023 one can say कि अब section और rule aligned है आपस में. अब अगर कोई 180 डेज में पेमेंट नहीं कर रहा है और उसका क्रेडिट पीरियड 180 दिन से कम का था, तो उसको रिवर्सल करने की जरूरत है। और जिस दिन से उसने इनपुट क्रेडिट लिया है तब से लेके वो जब तक रिवर्सल कर रहा है तब तक उसको ब्याज देने की जरूरत है। बट ऑल ऑफ दिस इज फॉर द इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट इन माय अंडरस्टैंडिंग availed on or after 1st of October 2023. Before that, there is no mechanism, and there are judgments of Supreme Court. Like for example, there is a municipal council judgment, Supreme Court, which says अगर लॉ में कोई चीज कोई स्पेसिफिक प्रोसीजर फॉलो करते हुए करने के लिए बोली गई है, so I can't take a view by saying that I will not follow the procedure and I will do it as per my understanding. So if the rule is saying it has to be shown in GSTR 2, I have to follow it, and till the time GSTR 2 is not made available to me, it is not my fault. So that's my understanding of the issue.
The date, Yash bhai, is October 22, I guess. 1st of October 22.
No, you are right. That is for the rule, but the section has been amended from October.
Section has been amended. Yes,
that
correct.
is now
agree,
it has to be October 23 only.
Agree. And what about the interest portion? कब से कब तक का देना है?
तो पुराना तो देना ही नहीं है जब
और जो अभी और आगे वाले की पीरियड,
आगे वाले में from the date of availment till the time I am reversing it. If let's say again, if I do not have balance in my input tax credit, if I have balance, then I would still not reverse it.
Then we'll go to 50 subsection 3, right?
50 subsection.
Okay. Let's move on. Now we have next query with us, which is related to interest, right? Now rule 88B has been recently introduced, and they have given the mechanism कि आपको interest कैसे calculate करना है. But again, like the government tries to streamline something and comes up with a new problem. Section 50 has been retrospectively amended at least thrice or four times, and then after rule 88B has been inserted, still we are in a situation कि हम straight away कुछ नहीं कह सकते कि यहाँ interest लग रहा है, यहाँ interest नहीं लग रहा है. In this particular case study, the matter is April 2023 की कुछ invoices थी जो GSTR 1 में अप्रैल में ना जाके जून 23 में रिपोर्ट हुई है, right? And GSTR 3 भी चूंकि अब ऑटो पॉपुलेट होता है तो it is accordingly filed for both April and June, precisely saying the tax of those invoices which was supposed to be paid in April 23 has been paid in June 23, right? Now the problem is department is asking for interest on that particular tax amount which is pertaining to April 23, because the rule 88B says that if you have reported the outward supply of a particular month in the return of that month, and if you have any liability in cash, then you have to pay interest on that cash component. In any other case, you have to pay on the shortfall of the output tax. Now in this scenario, अगर मैं ये invoices April 23 के रिटर्न में ही डिस्क्लोज कर देता तो I had sufficient input tax credit और मेरी cash liability कुछ नहीं होती. It means अगर मैं अप्रैल 23 का रिटर्न जुलाई में भी फाइल करूं तो भी मेरे को इंटरेस्ट की लायबिलिटी नहीं आएगी. Although I'll have to pay late fees, that is a different concern, but interest will not be imposed if I report those invoices in April 23 GSTR 1 and 3. Now what is the difference if I'm reporting those invoices in June 23? The rule is demanding interest from me on those invoices as well. So if we can refer rule 88, yes, 1 second. Yes, is it visible on the screen? Rule 88B. It says
Yes,
in case where the supplies made during a tax period are declared by the registered person in the return for the said period, and the said return is furnished after due date in accordance with provisions of section 39, except where such return is furnished after 73-74, The interest on tax payable in respect of such supplies shall be calculated on the portion of tax which is paid by debiting electronic cash ledger for the period of delay in filing the said return. Now this rule is saying कि अप्रैल के इनवॉइसेस थे, अप्रैल में ही आपको डिस्क्लोज करने थे, और अगर आपने अप्रैल में ही डिस्क्लोज कर दिए और आपकी फिर कोई कैश लाइबिलिटी अगर निकलती है, तो ऑन दैट कैश पोर्शन यू हैव टू पे इंटरेस्ट if there is a delay in filing GSTR 3B. Now the concern in the particular case study is, if I had disclosed those invoices in GSTR in April, I had no interest liability because I was having sufficient credit. Since merely by reporting those invoices in June 23, I have to pay interest for 3 months. What is your say on this, ESG?
I will, first of all, I will say interest is not payable. An answer for that, I will read 88.2.
Okay.
88.1 तो चलिए मान लेते हैं वो स्पेसिफिक की बात करता है बाय सेइंग कि जहां पर मैंने रिटर्न लेट फाइल करा और उसमें मैंने दिखा दिया. आपका केस ये है कि मैंने उसको दूसरे रिटर्न में दिखाया, वो रिटर्न में नहीं दिखाया. लेट्स से वो रिटर्न में मैंने वो दिखाया ही नहीं उसको. सो 88.2 लगेगा उस केस में, 1 तो लगेगा नहीं. 88.2 से 88B2 लगेगा. It says in all other cases where interest is payable in accordance with subsection 1 of section 50, the interest shall be calculated on the amount of tax which remains unpaid. Okay, अब आगे वाला पार्ट छोड़ दो, फिर वो बताते हैं कैसे बात करते हैं. पहली चीज जो 88B का जो 1 है, that is taking care of the proviso to 50 subsection 1, क्योंकि exactly यही चीज proviso के अंदर लिखी है जो 88B के 1 में लिखी हुई है. और 88B का जो 2 है वो 50 subsection 1 को टेक केयर करता है, नॉट द प्रोवाइजो. Now 50 subsection 1 says when there is failure, again the word there is when there is failure to make payment of tax within the due date, right? और 88B2 कहता है कि अगर 50 subsection 1 में आपका केस फॉल करता है तो टू द एक्सटेंट आपका जो टैक्स अनपेड था. एंड आई थिंक यहीं पर है वेयर आवर आंसर लाइज. यू हैव ऑलरेडी सेड कि अगर मैं इनवॉइस दिखा देता तो भी कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता, नहीं दिखाया तो भी कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ा क्योंकि क्रेडिट वहां पे अवेलेबल था. That means to that extent the tax was actually paid to the government. तभी गवर्नमेंट को कोई एडिशनल टैक्स नहीं मिल रहा था. All of us know that interest and penalty, the difference is that penalty is penal in nature whereas interest is compensatory in nature. मतलब अगर सरकार को नुकसान हुआ है then only interest would be applicable. That's the nature of interest. It is not always penal in nature, it is compensatory in nature. Now in this regard, from the earlier regime we have a Supreme Court judgment of Eicher Motors. The Eicher Motor judgment says that to the extent the tax which I have paid, of which I have claimed input tax credit, is as good as tax which I have paid to the government. मैंने जितना सरकार को जो टैक्स पे कर रखा है, अगर मेरे पास इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट पड़ा है, it is as good as tax which I have paid to the government, may have been paid by the previous supplier to the government, but it is on the money which I have given to the supplier. So in that case, that means अगर मैं वो सुप्रीम कोर्ट का जो रीजनिंग है, if I bring it here, I will say there is no failure on my part of making payment of tax to the government because I already had balance in my input tax credit. Because I had balance in my input tax credit, now if I read 88B2, it says to the amount of tax which remains unpaid. There is no tax which has remained unpaid. There has been only error in disclosing the amount in my GST returns. For that you may charge me whatever procedural penalty you want to charge. उसमें भी मेरे पास benefit available है section 126 के अंदर. So I will go ahead by saying 88B1 मत लगाओ, कोई बात नहीं. 88B2 में मैं फॉल करता हूँ, कोई टैक्स अनपेड नहीं है, कोई फेलियर नहीं है टैक्स पे करने का. आइशर मोटर सपोर्ट्स इस पे. आप म्यूट पे है देवेंद्र जी.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Now the second limb of this question is, there was one more situation, like there was an RCM liability in 2017 July. The RCM liability was paid from cash ledger. The amount was deposited in the cash ledger. In GSTR 3B, ITC was taken for that RCM portion. But however, there was a clerical error while filing GSTR 3B, and the output tax liability of the RCM, the outward tax, it was not shown in 3B. Hence, the cash ledger was not utilized. Return was filed. Later on, when it was realized that it has not been paid, it was paid through DRC 03. Now the department is demanding interest on that portion from the due date, from the date of filing GST 3B to the date of DRC. However, the cash ledger balance was maintained till date from the date of filing of 3B to the date of DRC. Still, the department is saying that you have to pay interest, and that to interest on 18%. And normally if you say कि 2017 का केस अगर आज से एक साल पहले भी निकला होगा तो टैक्स के ऊपर ज्यादा इंटरेस्ट बैठ रहा है.
बराबर हो गया.
In 5 years, it is 90% of the tax. So what is your say in this? Whether interest liability will be attracted here again? As you said, it is compensatory in nature और पैसा तो सरकार के पास ही पड़ा था.
Correct.
So as the law is drafted, कि until and unless cash ledger is debited, it is not treated as payment. So what is your say on this?
हाँ, so again ये थोड़ा डिफरेंट फुटिंग में, मतलब इसको आर्ग्यू करना या इसको डिफेंड करना वुड बी कंपैरेटिवली अ डिफिकल्ट टास्क टू माय अंडरस्टैंडिंग, एंड एज यू सेइंग, बिकॉज द लॉ इज ड्राफ्टेड इन अ मैनर टू से कि कैश लेजर में जो पैसा है दैट कुड नॉट बी ट्रीटेड एज पेमेंट ऑफ टैक्स मेड टू द गवर्नमेंट. बट जस्ट लुक एट द स्कीम. हम जब कैश लेजर में पैसा जमा कराते हैं तो वहां पे 3 हेड्स हैं, अलग अलग 3-4 हेड जो भी हैं हम उसमें जमा कराते हैं. नो डाउट मैं एक से दूसरे में शिफ्ट कर सकता हूँ, पर इट इज नॉट लाइक एज इफ इट इज माय ओन बैंक अकाउंट. हम विल लूजली से इट कि जो इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कैश लेजर में पैसा पड़ा है इट इज एज गुड एज कि वो मेरे बैंक अकाउंट में है. But when something is there in my own bank account, I need not take anybody's permission. I need not file an application, and I need not get a verification and an order done to get the money back. But cash ledger का refund लेने के लिए all of us have to file an application under section 54. उसको वेरीफाई कराना पड़ता है, दो रिक्वायरमेंट नहीं है, बट स्टिल द ऑफिसर हैज टू पास एन ऑर्डर, एंड ऑफिसर आल्सो हैज पावर वेयर ही कैन basically he can retain this amount in case there is any other tax liability which is outstanding against me. So if this would have been my amount, clearly all of these things would not have happened. Plus, if you would look at it otherwise, the manner in which government uses this amount, what I understand, government does not wait that the amount which is lying in the electronic cash ledger at the credit side, जब तक डेबिट नहीं होगा तब तक वो उसको इस्तेमाल नहीं कर सकते. What I understand, जब वो कंसोलिडेटेड फंड ऑफ इंडिया का बात करते हैं, कलेक्शन बात करते हैं, the amount which is there in the cash ledger also, that is also considered to show the numbers what has the collection been done. There is a passing remark in this regard in case of a Jharkhand High Court judgment called Nursing Spath Industries. In Nursing Spath Industries, the issue was very simple, that there was a notice for recovery of interest without issuing a show cause notice. Assessee went to the High Court. High Court में exact same issue he had said कि मेरे cash ledger में पैसा पड़ा था, but मुझे ध्यान नहीं था and I couldn't do it. But now the recovery has happened against me and no show cause has been given. He went to the High Court to explain why show cause notice should have been issued to him. High Court said that yes, in this case, a show cause with a speaking order should be passed. इस दौरान a passing remark has been given by the High Court by saying that अगर sufficient balance is lying in the cash ledger, then in that case one can take a view by saying that interest is not payable. Though this is not the final judgment, what I'm trying to say, this is not the conclusion for which the matter went to the High Court, but yes, High Court has given a passing remark in this regard. So if somebody wants to refer to it at a lower level, maybe they can do that. But ये एक वो difficult चीज है. For this, probably one has to go and fight up till Supreme Court to get a favorable order if one has to fight it, because law is not drafted like this.
Very rightly said, Yash bhai. Okay. We have sufficient time, like 20-25 minutes more, na?
Yeah.
So let's take further. Yeah, this is the most important query for today. The assessment proceedings which we are talking about, which starts with the issue of ASMT 10, or maybe further bill prior to that, a normal inquiry. Then when we receive ASMT 10, we have various questions on that. What are the observations they have put up? Is there any objection they have ki haan, on the basis of records available to them? Then they, on the basis of ASMT 11, when we file the reply to that, either they are satisfied or not, and if they are satisfied, they issue ASMT 12 and drop the proceedings, or if not, they move ahead for proceedings under section 73 or 74, or maybe for audit. So now the law is drafted in a manner that first preliminary there will be an inquiry with ASMT 10, then they will move on to section 73 or 74. In this case, we have various questions with this. Yash bhai, I'll come forward to you straight away. That questions and you may please. When the law was implemented, it was not in the picture. Later on, it was said that DRC 1A is compulsory and it should be issued before issuance of show cause notice. Later on, the rule was amended and now it is that it is not a compulsion. But again, if we are going to section 73 or 74, 74 says that if the tax interest and 15% of tax is deposited before issue of show cause notice, right, then the proceedings are over. But if DRC 1 is directly issued, how will I get that chance if DRC 1 is not given to me, intimating what is the liability as raised by the department? Yes, by your view.
So पहली चीज DRC 1A, मतलब इनफैक्ट ये DRC 1A otherwise all of us who are handling the show cause notices at the lower level, I would request all of us, maybe for once read sections 160 subsection 2. That's an important subsection. 160 subsection 2 says कि आपको पहली बार कोई नोटिस, कोई ऑर्डर या कोई भी कम्युनिकेशन गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से मिलता है और अगर आपको उसके अंदर किसी भी तरीके की कोई सर्विस में कमी लगती है या you find some irregularity in that notice or order and you don't bring it to the notice of the concerned officer at the first instance, then you are actually losing your right and you cannot raise that question at the subsequent level. So that means 160 subsection 2 एक तरीके से हमारे against में drafted है, where let's say मेरे को notice में procedurally there were error the manner in which it was served to me, या फिर जो sections में तरीका लिखा हुआ है, assessment is nothing else but it is a procedure to identify what is my tax liability. So if let's say the procedure is not followed properly, the notice is not served properly, all the other things which are required to get an assessment done is not done properly, and I do not bring that in writing to the notice of the concerned officer at a lower level, irrespective whether he agrees to it, he doesn't agree to it, he discards it, he doesn't listen to it, but अगर मैं नहीं लेके आता हूँ, it becomes very difficult to actually again bring it back at the appellate stage, say कि मेरे साथ नीचे ये चीज का non compliance हुआ है, I have not been served all these things, and then to tell the appellate authority कि that is why the notice was incorrect. That's one aspect. अब ये बैकग्राउंड में जब हम देखते हैं, दैट मीन्स ऑल ऑफ दीज क्वेश्चंस बिकम वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. व्हाट देवेंद्र जी इज सेइंग कि जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल DRC 1 दिया या नहीं दिया, व्हिच इज नथिंग एल्स बट इट्स अ प्री शो कॉज कंसल्टेशन, or it is kind of where department is telling to me before issuing a show cause notice for the last time that this is the amount of proposed liability which they want to raise against me. Do I agree to this? Do I don't agree to it? If I agree to it, am I paying it and taking benefit of 73.5 or 74.5? And if I'm not agreeing to it, then if I want to explain in brief, why am I not agreeing to it? And then they accordingly they'll see to it. Now this procedure is a before the adjudication, this is one last opportunity given. Is it mandatory? Again, as Devendra ji said कि rule के अंदर changes थे. The important aspect is आज की तारीख में जितने भी show cause हैं वहां पर ऐसा जरूरी नहीं हर केस में DRC 1A मुझे सर्व हो, and they would take records by saying कि amendment के बाद जो word shall be served लिखा था 142 1A में, उसको change करके अभी ये कर दिया कि it may be served, hence it is at the discretion of the officer. In this regard, we recently have a judgment from Andhra Pradesh High Court in case of New Morning Star Travels. The citation is 2023 10 TMI 1246. New Morning Star Travels. It's a very important judgment because इसके अंदर ये बोला गया है कि no doubt जिस पीरियड में शो कॉज नोटिस इशू हुआ है वो पीरियड में रूल के अंदर डिस्क्रिशन है, 142 1A लिखा है, पहले शैल लिखा था, बट अगर कभी भी लॉ की रीडिंग में एम्बिग्यूटी है, then in that case that ambiguity has to go in the favor of the assessee. और जिस पीरियड का शो कॉज नोटिस है वो पीरियड सारा ऐसा पीरियड है जहां पे मेजॉरिटी टाइम पे शैल वर्ड था, मे वर्ड नहीं था, hence that is why pre show cause notice or pre show cause consultation is mandatory. So now if you have a show cause notice and DRC 1A is not served to you, or it is not brought in record that why DRC 1A has not been given, चाहे वो स्क्रूटनी प्रोसीडिंग हो, ऑडिट की प्रोसीडिंग हो, DGGST का नोटिस हो, एंटी इवेजन का नोटिस हो, एनफोर्समेंट का नोटिस हो, in all those things before a 73-74 proceeding it is mandatory. If not given, one should definitely argue and object to it. At a later stage you will definitely have a benefit in this regard.
The second limb in this question, Yeshbhai, is what if ASMT 10 was issued and the department is saying कि 10 में हमने सब बता दिया था, now we are coming with the
Doesn't matter.
DRC 1 directly.
Because TAN is under assessment chapter and this
Yes.
is under adjudication chapter. तो ये adjudication के लिए prerequisite है कि adjudicate करने से पहले DRC 1 ही देना. So my understanding is still in that case DRC 1 is required.
I definitely agree with you in this. Next is whether DRC 1 and show cause are one and the same thing. The heading जो आज की तारीख में हमारे पास नोटिस आता है उसमें लिखा रहता है DRC 01, then they have DIN in case if it is a center, and then the entire length of the notice.
And they will write show cause notice also. So they will write DRC 1, then they will write show cause notice also. Whereas,
what is your say in this?
I think they're absolutely different. They are two separate documents, sir, and both of them have to be served to me separately. In a sense, DRC 1 is nothing else but it is summary of a show cause notice, whereas show cause notice is that document or a letter or notice which is intimating to me in detail what are the allegations against me,
yes,
what are the basis of that allegation, and what are the chronology of events which has happened. In fact, ये चीज सेक्शन 73-74 का जो मैनर ऑफ प्रोसीजर ऑफ सर्विंग नोटिस जो रूल 142 में लिखा हुआ है उसमें क्लियरली दे हैव मेंशन्ड दैट इट इज मैंडेटरी टू सर्व शो कॉज नोटिस अलोंग विद अ समरी इन DRC 01. That means DRC 01 is separate and show cause notice is separate. If only DRC 1 is served, then that means show cause notice is not served. Without show cause notice, there cannot be any adjudication. ओट शुगर करके सुप्रीम कोर्ट का जजमेंट है पुराना. अगर सिर्फ शो कॉज नोटिस दिया और DRC 1 नहीं दिया तो नकास इंडस्ट्रीज करके झारखंड हाई कोर्ट है जो कहते हैं कि DRC मतलब शो कॉज नोटिस विदाउट DRC 01 is irrelevant. So both of them have to be served. Both of them have to be served together. Both of them have to be served within time, and both of them have to be served in a manner as mentioned in the rule. Otherwise, it is not. It is an incomplete service. But again, I am repeating. ये बोलना पड़ेगा राइटिंग में. अगर नहीं बोला, that means I've accepted. I do not have problem with the incomplete service, and then I cannot take this argument at a later stage.
And while issuing show cause notice, all the compliances you have to do, like they have to make it a speaking one. They have to give the principles of natural justice and everything. All those procedures are to be followed in show cause notice, which is not the same in the DRC case, DRC 1 case. It is just a summary statement and has to be uploaded online.
Right, sir.
So, linked to this, the second question is, show cause notice in the name of DRC 1 was issued manually only, and the same was not uploaded online on the common portal. Now, whether this show cause notice is valid or not, and as we have already discussed it in the previous question also, what is your say again? If
again, it is invalid service, sir. Absolutely invalid service for a very simple reason that clearly again 73-74 says that show cause notice along with DRC 01 has to be uploaded served electronically. Now, what is the meaning of electronically? So we have a MP High Court judgment of Sri Tire Industries. It says that it has to be uploaded on the website of the revenue, and website of the revenue www.gst.gov.in. Okay. In fact, जब ये judgment आया उसके बाद there was one more problem. आप जब 169 section पढ़ते हैं along with section 146, तो 146 section में common portal define करा गया है. gst.gov.in कॉमन पोर्टल तो है, बट वो नोटिस सर्व करने के लिए कॉमन पोर्टल नहीं था. इसलिए गवर्नमेंट ने 2022 फाइनेंस एक्ट में रेट्रोस्पेक्टिव अमेंडमेंट करा और gst.gov.in को कॉमन पोर्टल बनाया विद रेट्रोस्पेक्टिव इफेक्ट फ्रॉम 1/7/2017 फॉर अपलोडिंग ऑल दीज नोटिसेस. Still today, if let's say I am being only served show cause notice manually and DRC 1 online, it is incomplete service. Show cause notice online without DRC 1, incomplete service. Show cause notice online along with DRC 01 number, but I cannot open DRC 01. That is also incomplete compliance, incomplete service. And now recently we have one more judgment. I think that is Sabri Infra Private Limited. That says अगर show cause notice को सर्व किया along with DRC 01 और वो additional notices के टैब में सर्व करा तो भी incomplete service. It has to be served under the tab notices and orders. तो अगर notices and order के टैब में सर्व नहीं किया और additional notices के टैब में सर्व करा, that is also a non-compliance to rule 142. Citation of judgment is 2023-154 taxman.com 147. तो मीनिंग देयर बाय करना भी है ऑनलाइन, टाइमली करना है, दोनों करने हैं और नोटिसेज एंड ऑर्डर वाले टैब में करने हैं. I think 99% जितने भी शो कॉज नोटिस है सब एडिशनल नोटिस वाले टैब में होते हैं. So
Yes,
that
yes.
is also one important argument which we can take.
But all these, we have to be very careful that these arguments are to be taken at the very ground level when we are giving reply to the show cause notice. So it is an eye opener for all the people who are doing practice in GST and are, eager to go into litigation. This is the first and basic principle, the basic lesson, that when we are replying to show cause, agar department ke liye show cause is the primary document which goes to the Supreme Court, the reply to show cause is the primary document for us which goes to the Supreme Court. So we have to be very careful in giving replies to the show cause notice. Now coming on to the second leg of the assessment proceedings, that is the adjudication procedure. We have seen various cases ki show cause notice online आया, उसी में लिखा कि आपको 30 days में reply देना है. 30 days निकल गए, पता भी नहीं चला, and the order has been passed. So is there any mandatory provision in the law that says that you have to give personal hearing before issuing the order? Although we have principles of natural justice which says that you have to give opportunity of being heard. Without that, the proceedings are invalid. So whether we have something in GST law per se with respect to that? Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely, sir. There is 75 subsection 4 which clearly says that opportunity of being heard needs to be given compulsorily. अगर मेरे against में कोई order pass करना है which is against me. So if the officer wants to pass an order against me, he has to compulsorily give me opportunity of being heard. And then 75(5) says that if I want to seek an adjournment, if I want to seek time, then I may seek adjournment, and I can seek adjournment 3 times. So that 3 times adjournment is also important by saying कि पहले तो departmental officer को मुझे date देना जरूरी है और मैं 3 बार date मांग सकता हूँ. तो जब मैं 3 बार date मांग रहा हूँ, effectively what I am trying to say is that मेरे को technically 4 date मिल सकती हैं. Obviously, I have to give it along with the reason, and unless the officer finds that reason to be obviously it is at his discretion, but he would have to write it if he is not giving a date to me. Majority that doesn't happen because otherwise it will be violation of principles of natural justice. Now, what you pointed out is absolutely correct. What happens generally is that they give a 30-day time limit to reply to the notice, and they treat कि वो 30-day time limit is the date where you have to appear and explain the matter. Whereas यहाँ पर DRC 1 का रोल आ जाता है क्योंकि DRC 1 के अंदर there is a specific table which is what is the date of personal hearing, what is the address for personal hearing, and what is the time for personal hearing. और DRC 1 के साथ में तीनों के आगे not applicable, not applicable, not applicable लिखा हो. Because तीनों के आगे not applicable है, that means effectively I have not been informed where I have to come, when I have to come, and on what date I have to come. And 30 days is only time limit for replying to the notice. And that is why we have now many high court judgment which says if it all says NA, then it is a non-speaking order violative of the provision of 75(4) and 75(5), and hence that is why compulsorily it has to be a speaking order after granting an opportunity of being heard. So ये जितने भी order, in fact that practice is also incorrect जहाँ पे hearing पहले है और 30 दिन समय पूरा नहीं हुआ reply देने के लिए. Technically I have to submit my reply and then only a hearing could happen. It can't be vice versa that my matter can be heard and then I am allowed to basically file the submission at a subsequent stage. So these are all violation of the principles of natural justice. We have judgment from Honorable Supreme Court in case of Oryx Fisheries. Oryx Fisheries is a central excise judgment. वो ये कहता है कि adjudicating authority has to be absolutely fair and unbiased, and the manner in which adjudicating proceedings are being done, it should instill the confidence in the assessee who's actually coming before and seeking justice in this case. So because adjudicating authority is now deciding, it becomes a kind of a quasi-judicial authority making a decision there. तो अगर ये सब चीजों का violation है, that means that there is effectively the principles of natural justice have not been followed. So if this is happening again, all these orders are invalid orders. They cannot sustain. Two options are available: either go to the writ court, challenge them, or take the matter to the appeal. When you will take the matter to the appeal, आप merit पे argue करने की बजाय पहले ये चीज पे argue अगर करते हैं, definitely you have a very strong chance to argue the matter, even if your matter is weak on merits, but will become strong in terms of procedural non-compliance by the revenue.
Okay, so coming on to the next question regarding the assessment order, whether DRC 7 is again
same,
whether it is compulsory to be uploaded on the portal or not.
Yeah, mandatory, sir. That's what one.
What is the remedy available to the taxpayer if the same is not uploaded online, but the order is received manually? What should the taxpayer do?
So technically, the advice would always be that assessee should file an appeal manually. In fact, Rule 108 now also allows also that you may file the appeal manually. And once you file that appeal manually along with the certified copy of the order, it shall be treated as a due compliance. What practically happens is, physical order पहले आ जाता है, then the order is online uploaded subsequently at a later stage. Uploading date बात की होती है. If somebody has missed filing the appeal in that case, and then they subsequently see the order, technically they are 3 months as per Rule 142 starts on with the date the order has been uploaded on the portal. No doubt portal will give you an error because portal के ऊपर by default date जो ऑफिसर के थ्रू डाली जाती है, दैट इज द मैनुअल पासिंग डेट ऑफ द ऑर्डर. वहां से 3 months पोर्टल काउंट करता है. But technically, again, in compliance with Rule 42, the proper service under Section 169 has happened only when the order is uploaded on the portal. यहाँ पर one more fact which is important, which I would like to bring. Somebody would read 169 and say कि 169 में बहुत सारे मैकेनिज्म दे रखे हैं ऑर्डर सर्व करने की या नोटिस सर्व करने की. फिजिकल भी है, बाय हैंड भी है, कोरियर भी है, चस्पा भी है. But the problem is, or maybe something which is in our favor, is 116 में no doubt there are many mechanisms given. But 73-74 में जब आप जाते हैं तो 73-74 स्पेसिफिकली एक प्रोसीजर के बारे में बात करता है, दैट इज अपलोडिंग इट ऑन द वेबसाइट ऑफ द रेवेन्यू. सो नो डाउट गवर्नमेंट में गिव मी थ्रू एनी अदर मीन्स, they may like to give it, but 73-74 की प्रोसीजरल कंप्लायंस तभी पूरी होगी जब तक वो नोटिस और सब्सिक्वेंटली जो ऑर्डर है वो जीएसटी पोर्टल के ऊपर अपलोड हुआ नहीं होगा. So if it is not there, then it is pure non-compliance of 73-74 in that case.
It was definitely wonderful interaction with you, Yash bhai. Thank you so much for that. And
You made it lively, sir.
So I think we can open the house for the queries from the members if there are any queries.
Yeah.
Or else if you want to share something else, if some controversial issue we have not covered and if you want to put some light on that, please feel free.
Maybe one issue on which you can put light because you come from that particular city is regarding residential dwelling, because that's an issue which I think all of us are facing after this reverse charge has come. कि क्या रेजिडेंशियल ड्वेलिंग माना जाए. आपके कोटा में तो हर रेजिडेंशियल ड्वेलिंग है भी और नहीं भी है बिकॉज ऑफ द हॉस्टल्स द वे इन विच दे आर रनिंग. सो हाउ आर यू टैकलिंग इट देयर, व्हाट इज द व्यू एंड व्हाट शुड अदरवाइज बी द ट्रीटमेंट. 12% टैक्स लगना चाहिए रिवर्स चार्ज में, इसमें 18 लगना चाहिए, नहीं लगना चाहिए, एग्जेम्पशन अवेलेबल है. जो हॉस्टल्स चल रहे हैं कमर्शियल एरियाज में या अदरवाइज रेंटेड प्रेमाइसेस आर देयर. Yes.
See what we have rightly pointed that Kota is facing the situation where the coaching industry is prominent in Kota, and almost every second or third house is having PGs on, and the people have their proper businesses as running hostels. So first I would like to share what the department is saying. Department is saying that if you have a hostel and it is situated in some residential colony, you have a residential title, then we can, that is also we are not sure, but we can treat it as a residential dwelling. If the building is situated say in commercial area or in industrial area, then straight away they are saying that it is not a residential dwelling. Unfortunately, we have certain advanced rulings which says that a residential dwelling is one where 2 or 3 conditions are satisfied, that there has to be a permanent stay. They are also referring to the educational guide which was in the service tax regime, and from there they are saying that there has to be a permanent stay, and it has to be a kitchen, and it should be a standalone unit. Now when we are talking about the hostels, there's no kitchen present, rather there is a mess which and a common kitchen where all the students come and have food. All these challenges came after last year July 22, when the exemption of 1000 rupees or equivalent was removed in case of hotels or accommodation services. Halaki we had the view that exemption notification is not applicable to hostels as residential dwelling, because that is for the accommodation services. And when we talk about accommodation services, that has to be related to temporary stay and not permanent stay. The basic difference which we are treating in temporary stay and permanent stay, again we are taking help from the education guide, which says that up to 3-month period we can say it is a temporary stay. if a person has the intention of staying beyond 3 months, although ठीक है वो 1 महीने में छोड़ के चला गया, but he had the intention of staying there at least for 10-11 months, we will treat it as a residential dwelling. And the focus of the entire transaction comes down to the one single definition: what is a residential dwelling? If we are able to identify, if we are able to define what the term is, then we can have answers to various questions. In my personal opinion, residential dwelling, we can say like any place like which is any inhabited, which is built in such a way where people can live, should be a residential dwelling.
Correct.
Further, the exemption notification which talks about is says residential dwelling given for the purpose of residence.
Correct.
Now, if I have a dwelling, which I have a building which can be used for residential purpose, and if I'm giving it for residential purpose, then it should qualify under the exemption, and I don't have to check anything else. If I'm giving it for commercial purpose, then definitely that exemption is not qualified, and I have to pay tax. So this is basic understanding. And although here in Kota we have, from Kota only we have one advance ruling for infrastructure company, and they went to advance ruling. There they get the reverse advance ruling. They are now pending in the High Court of Rajasthan. However, they are paying tax at the rate of 12%.
Achha.
Now again, the question is, if you are providing accommodation services, then it is 12%. But accommodation services is for temporary stay. This is what you are giving is on rent. Now rent will attract 18%.
So they are paying under reverse charge or forward charge?
They are paying the hostels. If they are registered, they are collecting from the students, they are paying under 12%. If the building owner and the hostel are different, the hostel owner is saying it is a residential dwelling, I will not get registered, you pay, you take your call, I will not pay under reverse charge because I am not registered. The reverse charge mechanism is coming only when the recipient is registered. So the companies which are having pan India presence, they are saying that we will not get registered here in Rajasthan and we will take it on rent, your residential dwelling, and there is no liability on us. You are also giving residential dwelling. They are taking judgment of Tagad Amrish High Court that you also don't have to pay. So they are not paying. Some people, those who want to play safe, they are paying. So we are still waiting for a Supreme Court judgment, or at least a clarification from side of the government what they actually want. Right. What is your view on this, Yashbhai?
I agree to what I think there are in UK where there are some judgments in respect of domes, the small domes which are there. They say basically any place where somebody retires at the end of the day can be treated as a residential dwelling, retires for the day. That's what technically it means. And जो आप 3 महीने वाली बात बोल रहे हैं, to my understanding, I think वो service tax में pre-negative list ये define करा गया था कि आपको residential use कैसे मानेंगे. But you are right. I think government has to come out with clarification in this regard because अगर municipal पट्टे के हिसाब से चलते हैं, then that वो उसपे it would not give a fair view. I mean, it may at some place it might gives me advantage, it may not give me advantage, but it could not be fair. Calcutta municipal rules I had read once. उसके अंदर उन्होंने वो बात बोली है जो आप बोल रहे हैं. वहां पे ये लिखा हुआ है कि उसमें किचन होना चाहिए, एक बेडरूम होना चाहिए, और it should be place where I intend to live. These kind of words are there. So वो एक different footing पे बात करता है. So because there is lack of clarity, there is going to be problem. The only challenge is because we are claiming exemption, the onus is on us to prove that our exemption claim is right. So that's why it becomes even more challenging there. But you're right, sir. On the intention of it, even if it is at a commercial place and I'm staying it for a longer period, I should be able to claim the exemption.
In case income tax also, if I'm making a house in a residential or in a commercial area, I'm getting benefit of Section 54 in there.
Correct.
So the intention of the government has to be same, whether they are charging income tax or GST.
Right, absolutely right.
We have one query in the chat box also. He's saying, what about interest liability related to 1718 and 1819? Any amnesty scheme we are expecting, or we should deposit interest in the protest?
Expecting a lot of things, but interest, if it is payable, frankly speaking, then I think one should pay that interest. The problem is once you pay it, then you can't expect relief in the amnesty. So either if you want to claim the benefit, then pay it and file a refund, and then contest the matter by saying that the interest was incorrect. Maybe one view can be that 50 subsection 2, it says the manner in which interest needs to be calculated would be prescribed. That prescription has happened to 88D. and it has come, I think, somewhere in 2022, if I'm not wrong. Uske pehle, for all those period, we can say that there was no mechanism. Tough call to take. Maybe you have to litigate it up till courts, but that is one possible way to argue the matter wherever there is a liability to pay tax in cash.
One question is whether its recording will be available. I think Nitin Gupta ji will be the right person to answer this question, whether this recording will be available on YouTube or not. Nitin Gupta ji, I think it's all from us, and I would like to now hand over the session to you. Over to you, Nitin ji.
Sir, I think Nitin sir is not here. I am from office.
Okay.
I think there's no more questions now, I think.
And
So we can end.
whether this recording will be available on YouTube or
Yes, sir, it
Facebook or
will be
anything?
available on the YouTube channel of CRC.
Okay.
So I would like to thank both the speakers on behalf of CRC of ICI for the wonderful deliberation. And I would also like to thank all the attendees for joining this webinar. Thank you, sir.
And the pleasure is always ours. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Devendra ji.
Thank you,
sir.
Ajay. Thank you so much.